So, did you guys rent a room for the show?
Well, Clint lives like 3 hours south of me.
Yep.
So we just came down. I'd stay in the night and then drive back tomorrow. So, but we're renting by the hour.
Is that possible?
Oh, well now. Hey, there it is.
Boom.
All right, I'll bring us in. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Herp House Rock. We got Dave Levinson dropping the beat. We got Ben Levin over there scratching on the guitar or something.
What?
Sarpamitra, Bartley Reptiles, talking colubrids, talking weird stuff, admiring Dave's necklace. Let's get into it.
So, something that we always ask everybody that we have on here, you guys can each take a turn, but how did you get started into reptiles? What really drove the passion, and how did it get from that to where you're at now?
No pressure.
For me, it was I was 6 years old, caught an eastern black king snake here locally, and fell in love. I mean, instantly. Now, I only had this snake in my possession for 2 days because it bit me in the front yard. I screamed, threw it like a little girl, and that was, the end of that particular king snake. But at that point, I was hooked. I continued to read what I could read, get my hands on. Any television show, if a snake was on it, I'm paying attention. I talked to anyone that I learned knew anything about them, which was very few in the area at the time. And I was lucky in the sense of, even though my parents weren't into reptiles at all, they looked at it as there was a lot worse I could have been into. So they encouraged it. They would give me pretty much what I wanted when it came to books and buy reptiles here and there. So for me, it started with picking up a baby king snake off the ground, 6 years old, and just ran from there.
That's awesome. And Matt?
Well, we did this in the YouTube video with you guys too, but obviously Chicago Reptile House, going there as a kid, grandmother and family really kind of fostered the reading aspect of keeping reptiles and learning about their natural history, and really just kind of expanded off of that. Obviously wasn't allowed to keep snakes as a kid, but really kind of moved towards the frogs, turtles, lizards, chameleons. And now it's really just snake related, and 2 emperor scorpions that I fed yesterday in front of my nephews. And my nephew's like, what is that thing? He thinks they're awesome. They're land crabs, by the way.
Little butter, a little lemon, you're good to go.
Straight on the flat top.
Yeah.
So that's good that they're still doing good for you. I'm glad that you.
I'm relieved that I was able to get them to you alive, because I've never shipped an invert before that. So, kudos to me.
Hey, I'll put it this way: getting them out of that container was a little interesting too.
When we unboxed them, I took one out for the video, and it immediately shot out and crawled up my arm. I was like, "Okay, this is happening."
he literally was like, "This is happening. This is happening. I don't know." And I'm like, "Can you shut up? I'm getting a shot here."
It turned out to be good footage, but never happened before in my life, and hasn't happened since.
Yeah, the only time I've held a spider or any invert in kind of a captive situation was at Chicago Reptile House, when a woman came in and was terrified that her son bought this pink-toed tarantula. And you could see the kid was just so terrified of getting it out because it was so fast. And I was like, "Oh, well, you just go like this real slow, put it in your hand." And the kid sees it and is like, "Oh, this is so much easier now." The woman turns to me and is like, "Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it." I go, "I'm terrified of spiders." That's the first time I ever did that. But for a kid, I'll do anything.
Sometimes you just got to put your game face on.
Yeah. I had a similar situation with the emperor scorpions when we bought a pair of adults, and the lady's like, "Oh, they're great. You can just hold one." And I'm like, "Sure." and I put my hand out, and she puts it on me, and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I mean, it's a an adult emperor scorpion. Never held one before, and my girlfriend's like, so you're allergic to bees? Is this going to be like the same thing? And I'm like, just don't move. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, be fine, I guess.
Oh man.
She doesn't have an EpiPen laying around, does she?
She probably should, but I don't even. I just.
See, like both of the stories, I was waiting to hear of the hit that one of you, any of you took. Because I keep picturing, being at one of the shows where we're doing a demonstration and holding let's say a black rat snake and saying, hey, this particular one's great. It's always calm and tame and gentle as it turns around and latches on, out of nowhere. So it's.
Yeah, luckily enough, that's never happened with an arachnid.
Yeah.
I can get bit by snakes all day long. I don't give a crap about that, but I don't know. Even when they say the venom isn't a big deal, I'm like, I just don't want to do that,
Well, it's the best tooth as well. There's like some of those arachnids, like they're real venomous, but they're $10.
Nobody wants them because they bite all the time.
Yeah.
Get a Vietnamese centipede crawling up your arm. You're like, nothing could possibly go wrong.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome.
Let me give you some mouse.
They will eat that. Those things they're scary looking. So, but let's talk about snakes. I mean, you guys both keep snakes. You don't keep.
Getting off on a tangent here.
Yeah. So Dave might pop out and in every once in a while. If he gets a phone call, sometimes he'll pop out and in. But
apparently we've offended him.
We're not talking about snakes. So that's why.
He's like, that's it. I'm off. So there's so much that I want to talk to you guys about, and we were supposed to come do this in person, and and we will. We're doing it on the podcast, but we will do it sometime in person. But man, we were supposed to do it like this week, I think, or last week. We were the plan. So
then the apocalypse happened, and
yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Got zombies running around, It's the way it goes. So, I don't know which one we want to start with. Maybe we can go with Clint if you want to. How's your season going? Like, talk to us about the species you're keeping, and how things are progressing. Is there any? I could actually ask like 100 questions, so I'll just slow it down. Like, let's start with that.
We gotta start at the beginning.
I'll tell you, this year is going really, really well. As every year, I'm going to have the hiccups. You're going to have the losses and the things that a clutch goes bad, or infertils are laid, and it's a gut punch because it's something you really wanted to come out. But just talking to Matt at dinner, and have a friend that is cleaning cages over at my place right now, and sent a couple pictures. We got 2 more clutches on the ground, and I think that makes clutch number 55 on the year so far. Yeah, and I mean that's definitely the best year I've had so far. Now that's 55 laid. That's not 55 hatched, right? So we got to make that happen. And there's several more to go. So I have to say the year is going extremely well from a number standpoint. There's also a couple species that, if lay, or at least one, if it lays, it'll be the first time I've produced that species. And that's always exciting for me.
And what species is that?
This is Volante. I'll let him give the whole scientific name. He says the big words, but
the Volante.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I used to make the joke I was where Volante came to die because I wanted so many of them. Finally, if gotten everything just right, got a gravid female that's due to lay eggs in just a couple days. So as long as I can hatch them out, then I can put that species under my belt as well as being able to reproduce. So exciting stuff.
That's
awesome.
What
species we're working with right now? Oh gosh, various black rat morphs. joint project with Matt. Various Carinata morphs, another project with Matt. The cockeye, Laticinctus, Volante, Pulcher, green bush rat snakes, mandarins. Just kind of going through my head now. Rack to rack. California king snake morphs, Honduran morphs.
Are you strictly colubrids?
I do have, I would say, maybe around 20 ball pythons. It's not really at one point I had about 200, but it was just a market that obviously is kind of saturated, and I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. Colubrids have always really been my go-to thing because you have such a variety, not just in color and appearance, but it's so many different characteristics, from one species to another. You have the different care. This needs humidity and low temperature. This one needs zero humidity and high temperature. I feel that if you're dealing with a large number of various colubrids, you actually become a better snake keeper because you have to learn more than if it's just one species such as ball pythons and that. But other than ball pythons, I do keep. Other than colubrids, I keep a handful of ball pythons, just a few morphs that I enjoy.
That's cool.
What kind of king rat morphs you working with?
We've got T positives, T negatives, hypos, high yellows.
Yeah.
Nice. And do they have the disposition that everybody says they have? They ready to kill you?
I'd say probably, at least in the collection that we have, I would say 75% of them, yes.
Thought you were going to swing the other way.
Sometimes what I find is like babies are just nervous. They're not real bitey or snippy. Once you get to about that 2 to 4 year range, that's when they're absolute jerks. Once they're bigger than that, I've got a pair of adults that are pushing 8 feet at least, and they have not once even acted like they were going to strike at me. Never.
That's cool.
Then I have some that'll come out of the cage at you. So it's.
Yeah, they're also called stinking goddess for a reason, man. Those things, my hands still smell the must because I was the one probing them. And it's like projectile across the room.
Absolutely. I would go to say, though, anybody who's watching this all in, they are not as aggressive as what you hear. A Ridley eye, cave dwelling rat snake is twice as aggressive as what I've experienced with Carinata.
And I think, just to talk about with the Carinata and stuff like that, or king rats, I think they're just very secretive animals and they're looking to run away. So they're not really, unless you're really working with that animal, I mean, they're going to jet. So, and just like when we've talked about and stuff like that, you can get pretty much any of these colubrids, cockeye, Laticinctus to handle really well. But it's the time you put up front with working with that animal.
Absolutely.
And, a big colubrid like a king rat and stuff like that, not all the time are we pulling them out, and unless it's like daily checks or cleaning cages, especially when you get big collections too.
When you've got an 8-foot snake as big as your forearm that is fast and does not stop moving, it can be intimidating. And I would also say, anyone who just looks at the face of a Carinata, they look angry all the time.
Yeah.
Just that look in their face. But I think their reputation, they're not quite as bad as what you hear. But you're going to get some attitude. It does occur.
Have you ever experienced, and this is just something I was thinking about, the temperament, if you can call it that, changing if you adjust the temperature of the environment? Like some animals, when they're warmer, they're more ready to go, and when they're a little bit cooler, they're a bit more docile and things like that. Have you guys ever noticed anything like that where it's a slight change might change that?
Yeah. So when you think about optimal temperatures and things of that nature, I've noticed it with the Porphyracea. When keeping them too warm, they will get a little bit more nippy, just because they're more agitated and not as calm, just because they're constantly trying to seek a area of their cage or enclosure where they can actually reach that optimal temperature. And if they're not able to, right, they're always on the edge. It's like, I don't know, going out to a club when you could actually go to a club, and you're like, forget these people. I just want to have my beer at the bar, and all these other people just keep jumping on top of you. I mean, similar metaphor.
Gotcha.
Definitely going to affect their attitude. And I mean, a little pro tip: if you're keeping Carinata and you want to take a picture of a big one, do it in the winter. Don't try to do that. So I mean, it's pointless. You're not everything. Half of it's blurred because of the move. So.
Man.
Yeah. All right. So Matt, same question for the podcast. What about you? How's your season going? I mean, obviously we've seen a lot of your stuff and pictures. So how's your season going? What species you keeping?
Yeah, for sure. So my season's a little bit later than Clint's, just because I cycled my animals a little bit longer and woke them up later than Clint. So we're still seeing some clutches dropping over at the house. We're still waiting on Mollendorfi to lay eggs. That should probably be another 2 months, maybe.
We're waiting for that too, by the way.
Don't you worry.
Waiting for a bunch of clutches from you, man. Like, oh my goodness.
But the moles, Vietnamese mandarins, should have some more red and black striped snakes laying here pretty soon too.
Those are cool.
Some more files. I think 2 Cape files are gravid too again, a little bit later in the season for them.
Those capes are awesome.
Dude, I love those animals.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, like on those files, just how much interest they've gotten. I mean, you guys probably get a lot of feedback when you guys post pictures and stuff like that on them.
All the time. And, you know, I'm pushing them hard, man. Like, those things are cool. Oh,
Well,
so
and
cool.
like handling them and stuff like that, they never offer to bite.
They're so placid. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they're great. When people ask me about them, and I don't mean to get off on a tangent, you know, while you're explaining your season, but when people ask me, they're like, "Oh, they seem cool," and you're like, "They're cool and all, but you'll never know how great they are until you handle one. Just the feel of them, the up close look, you know, how they interact. It's just one of my top snakes that I enjoy for sure."
Yeah, how are those 3 doing? Still doing well?
They're doing great, man. I'm really surprised. They're shedding multiple sheds, eating. One of them's a mouser, but hey, it's a mouse. It's not a lizard. The male is a beast. Like, he just eats. The one of the females doesn't eat as much. Like, he'll eat 2 rat pups. She'll eat 1. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I can't wait till November. I'm real excited.
Yeah, they're, like I said, I mean, you don't see very many of them, and right now with the way import exports are, you know, in my experience, the wild caughts are hit or miss even too, just because people bring them in and try to sell them, and some will do well and others will drop just drastically. I mean, even Clint and I, we were talking at dinner too, like just in general, like working with colubrids versus like working with ball pythons or boas and stuff like that. Sometimes you'll just have like, you know, a death and it'll be like, well, what caused this and stuff like that.
Definitely going to have a higher mortality rate working with large numbers of colubrids versus large numbers of boas and pythons. It's just that they faster metabolisms. I mean, so it just happens, you know, they get a hold of something that with a ball python, you never even know it had an issue. You know, it works its way through, but a colubrid can wipe it out, you know, quick. I think also with the speed of their metabolisms, you're more apt to have organ failure things of that nature. They can also have enlarged hearts due to fat content of some of their rodents. So it's just working with colubrids, there's definitely a higher mortality rate. So no doubt.
And it's always like random too. You're like, oh, this animal's doing great, or what's going on, and then dead.
Or there's that one that looks like it's been dead for 6 months. You don't know why. How are you still alive? You just couldn't bring yourself to put it put it down. And so it's odd. There's definitely a lot to learn.
Hopefully it's all go on tangents, because that's definitely what we're doing.
Oh no, yeah. We're on here for the long haul, so we can talk about everything.
I feel like it's going to be a night of tangents, but they're going to be good ones, and we're going to learn a lot. So that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find the average lifespan of the colubrid is much shorter, or at least their viability as fertility goes, than a python?
I would say as a whole, they're shorter, but at the same time, species to species.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're going to see some where you see a good maybe 8 years of fertile eggs being laid, and some maybe a 12-year lifespan all in captivity. But then there's others that 20 plus years easily. It's just you never know. That's going to be a big one because there's so much of a variety from species to species, really.
And do you would think that from like old world to new world colubrids, or do you think that that's not a delineating factor?
I don't know if I could fully answer that from the simple fact of I have more years under my belt with North American species as far as colubrids, and so I know more of their lifespan all in, where with the Asians, it's been 10 years roughly compared to almost 30, with North Americans. So my gut's telling me Asians tend to not live as long as the North American, but at the same time, I also believe that the Asian species their needs haven't been fully learned or just have over the past 5 to 10 years compared to the North American species before. So we just may have been making more mistakes, the past few years. Maybe they could look fine over 8 years in captivity with us, but there could be that one thing that they weren't getting or were getting too much of that eventually shortened their lifespan.
And just to add off of that, like talking about Porphyracea, you guys talked to Robin about Porphyracea and like breeding them, mad style and stuff. Like some people, Clint and I, we've talked about it. Like we should be seeing tons of coxeye, laticinctus, poultry. Because you guys notice, with the poultry that like one clutch, hatch, another clutch on the ground. Like it's just like, but I think some people just may not be providing or supplementing or providing good quality rodents. Optimal temperatures may be off. One thing even too, with the life cycle of the Porphyracea, I don't hibernate coxeye, laticinctus, or poultry. The only ones that really require the winter brumation is volante to actually start the follicles to actually grow. But with that even being said, with some of those animals, if you keep those optimal, like feeding, temperature, humidity, most of those you can get 3-4 clutches a year out of them. But is that really what's happening in the wild? And like lifespan then starts to drop a little bit, especially if you're not feeding them properly, or you think about like, and this is something like I've learned with keeping Arcalaphe, and I've shared with Clint too. I think for some of the stuff we keep, I think we overfeed it too. And that really lends a hand at, fatty liver disease, enlarged hearts, breathing problems, right? It's just like all of us, depending on the quality of life, you could be drastically decreasing it, even in a rack system, right? It's the easiest way to keep large collections, maintain it, clean it, feed it, water it. but we only give them one option kind of deal. So
yeah, that actually brings up another thing we were just discussing, working with green bush rat snakes. Porcina. That's a species that I don't personally know of anyone, and I don't know if Matt does, who has seen a large amount of success in consistently reproducing them with full clutches and full fertility. And so through some conversations with others, a few things were kind of standing out, and that's they were always in their water. That was one thing we were noticing. They were in a rack system, always in their water, no matter how humid their cage was, no matter what the temperature was, whether adjusted up, adjusted down, no issues with mice, anything like that. So speaking to one young lady, a friend of mine, because she reached out asking, do yours do this? I said, yes. And, and I kind of think that it's because they want to be in an arboreal setup. They need that, right? And she set it up before I did. And sure enough, 2 weeks of having it set up, the snake hadn't gone to its water bowl once. Not one time was it in there. When I go in my room and 3 out of 4 are in their water bowls right then. So that's one investment we've made. But then looking at some of the fertility issues, I can get 20 eggs out of 2 females a year, but maybe I'm only hatching out 4, are coming through. So having some big issues there. Well, with these being a green snake that's also arboreal, active during the daylight, probably needs some UV. Thinking that this may be a snake species that's needing more of this than much of what we're dealing with elsewhere. So move those over. Got them now set up in an arboreal setup with UV light, calcium on all their food, and want to change the way I incubate their eggs next year as well, to see all these different shifts to see if that's what cracks the code for this particular species. And you never know, it's exciting because while I don't want to call a green bush rat snake rare necessarily, to see long-term sustainable success in a great number, that's rare. And so to really continue to learn a species that we've not hammered down yet is interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because like Clint and I were talking about, because I sold Clint his babies, and Clint had raised them in a rack setup. And when I had them in exoterras, and I actually provided heat lamps, UVB, and I would double clutch the animals. I actually got my animals from Carl Krumke, who's really not in the hobby that much anymore, but really was one of the leading breeders with Asian rat snakes. And he used to have I think they were like 2 foot by 2 foot square neodeshas. And that's how he used to keep them with lighting. But, even, I don't remember if we talked about this before, but, we wanted to get Stan on here, but he's traveling right now for his job. And one of the things like with UVB, I really do think that for some of these species, we definitely need it. Because in Persian rat snakes, Stan was the one that originated the pied, if you will. And one of the problems over the years with working with those is as those animals mature sexually, they will actually get all kinked up, almost looking like iguanas that have calcium deficiency. And so, that's really where, Clint had called Stan, and they were talking about the UVB, and Stan was like, I'm using it here and there. And, I think it does have a lot of benefit here, because in reptiles, no one really studies this, especially with snakes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's, to make sure to give credit where credit's due, it certainly was a conversation with Stan that led to let's try this UV and see if that makes the difference, It really, the statement that we were just making, where because those green bush, they were doing fine in the racks. They're eating well, they're growing, shedding, mating, laying eggs, but we're not having great success with the eggs or the fertility, which then it just suggests something's missing. Even though all that other, because if I wasn't breeding them, then I would have to kind of assume that everything's okay if they're eating, growing, shedding. But as far as the lifespan that we were discussing, I'm probably missing something in their care that this is telling me something's missing. So that's where kind of, I think some of the Asian species specifically, we're still learning what those pieces are that they really require for a full healthy life.
Well, and you know, guys, we've talked about this before too. With like everyone wants a care sheet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're
That'd be nice.
but if you're not paying attention to the animals and like watching certain things just may not make sense. You might just keep them and be like, these things are infertile, you know.
It's funny that you're talking about that with because we are actually having those conversations about rhino rat snakes, and the same thing. People are saying they're spending their almost all the time in their wire dishes, but the minute you offer them an arboreal setup, they're up perching and they're not in their wire dish anymore. Giving them UVB, like I don't know. I mean, there's maybe some validity to that.
Well, think of their color too.
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe that green's not just for camouflage necessarily. I mean, it's leaves are green to soak in UV, you know, for photosynthesis. And so I'm wondering if some of these green arboreal animals, if that green is more than just camouflage, it's actually to help them absorb that as well.
Well, Ryan and Ben, I mean, we talked about this too with those blue rhino rats that were offered.
Yeah.
The funny part about it is with the rhino rats, especially, if you offer UVB to them, they will actually get bluer in coloration.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that, you know, and that's full, you know, depending on the wavelength, you know, there's so many different UVB bulbs out there too. But under optimal lighting, you'll actually see that because it's just a hormonal balance with those animals. And you'll see more or less, or, you know, it all depends on the animal too, but it really starts to bring out more turquoise and blue coloration in the animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked to Ryan McVeigh about lighting. I mean, he's like a fanatic about UVB lighting and stuff, and super knowledgeable about that stuff. And we'll go through different species, and he is like so on board that so many species really do need and benefit from it. Another thing that we've been talking about a lot on the podcast, and Dave could probably talk to it a bit more than me. We had Vin Russo on, and he's talking about the having, because you mentioned it about feeding the animals too much, but Vin talked about, and Dave understands it probably better than I do, about a feeding cycle. And, you know, with boas, because Vin Russo's like the boa guy, about, you know, when to feed in the wild, what they really would do. And we know, and you know about the Japanese forest rats, about how sporadic they are in eating. You know, I wonder if there's more to it. Like, it's all I've been, actually, Dave, and I want to thank you for having been on. Like, ever since then, though, that's all I've been thinking about is food cycling the animals. So, Dave, I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but it seems to me like it's very important. That's something that we are forcing the animals to eat all the time, but they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, that's going to vary from species to species, you know, but, you know, colubrids, you know, certain ones, you have to have a pretty regular schedule, as you know. They start breaking down pretty easily if you're not feeding them enough. But, you know, it's really not a stupid concept, focusing on what they do in the wild and trying to replicate it in captivity, which a lot of us don't do. A lot of us go based on what works for somebody else and what works for us. And again, it's what works for Vin. I know Tracy and Dave Barker have talked a lot about this with food cycling over the years. But no, colubrids can be a little bit different. But again, you really just have an understanding of the background of the animal and where it's from and what it needs. And food cycling is really an important key to that.
Well, you know, even like mentioning Archalaphe, right? The Chapter rats. I mean, Clint beat me to it. He was the first one here in the U.S. that, well, second person, because Nazareno bred him in New York, and then Clint bred him. But I mean, we should be seeing a lot more of those even too. But like last year, I lost one of my proven females because she went to double clutch and got egg bound. and it was whenever animals die, I always try to learn from the mistake, open them up, try to figure out what went wrong. And the way reptiles build up fat is so much different, especially because it's just like a globular aspect, and it grows in those around the organs and restricts it. And talking to people all over, I think it's from offering too large of prey items, because a lot of people have lost arcalafe due to that, and
I lost an adult pair last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like feeding smaller meals more regularly, instead of offering like a big, large mouse, 2 fuzzies or 3 fuzzies or what have you. But just because the way the fat just builds in those areas, it makes it challenging.
I've become a very big proponent of, whether calcium powders, multivitamin powders, because hands down, when we're keeping what we've got on an all raw diet, that's not natural.
Mm-hmm.
We're missing a lot, you know what I mean? And I think they're missing a lot. And obviously, I think some species it's not as big of a deal to. Other species, I think we see that in reproductive issues and early deaths and surprise deaths and things like that. So, if unable to feed a variety, for me the biggest variety I feed mice, rats, chicks. So at least there's a little bit there with poultry. But the multivitamin I think is something that definitely the hobby should do more of when it comes to snakes. I think lizards and tortoises, those are taken care of a little more when it comes to a variety of supplements and feed. But snakes, we don't do enough of. We don't do enough of that to take care of them, their needs, their true needs, I guess.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Talking snakes, like you said, and it's what's readily available for us in the hobby. It's you go to a website, they're gonna have all sizes of mice, all sizes of rats, maybe some gerbils, maybe something else, but for the most part, it's just what's available. So that's what most people get used to feeding on the regular. But I know people that add different minerals and clays to their diets. Junior, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about this, makes his own sausage for his hognose. And ever since he started doing that, and he's got a very interesting recipe, he says his production numbers go up every year. And your comment about smaller meals, I couldn't agree more. It's no different than somebody who's looking to gain more muscle mass when they go to the gym. It's not eating bigger meals during the day. It's eating a lot of small meals during the course of the day to speed up your metabolism. And then again, talking obesity really quick, in boa constrictors, all that extra fat mass that's on a big female boa, as babies start developing in that's just more pressure that's being created against developing live. Babies are going to be a live bearing animal. Outside eggs, it's probably a little bit different. But that's a lot of extra pressure. I believe that we get more kinking because of it. I believe you get more stillborns because of that. I think leaner the better, or I always say more muscular the better. If your boa ends up in a real round shape, you're probably doing something wrong. It has that nice flat top and that whole square body to it. I think that's a very healthy animal.
Right.
Agreed.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good. Well, like having bred mice before and stuff like that, in their diet, I used to add calcium gluconate, amino acids in the water and stuff like that, just to bring it into the animal. Because if you really think about it, like with the animals we're feeding just a block diet, right? And with even that being said, they're not getting UV light either. Even for humans, we're supposed to be out, I think it's like 8 minutes of like full exposure to the sun, and that's enough to actually process vitamin D3 for bone structure. And we don't do that for rodents. They're in farms, they're all over, depending on our setup, and they're not exposed to that kind of setting. So even the host animal that we're feeding as prey may not have all of the nutrients that are required or needed. Ben, Ryan, I sent you guys some of the amino acid stuff, and I told you about that.
The gut load.
Yeah, the gut load stuff, and just to add more bacteria to their
I've
I've been using the beneficial bacteria in our skinks ever since we brought them out of brumation. They're doing, I mean, I can't tell you that it is, you know, scientifically there's something better, but like they seem to be doing fine. You know what I mean? It can't hurt to have more beneficial gut flora. You know what I mean? Because they're certainly not getting it from, you know, missing a predatum and getting some dirt in their mouth or whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny, even like with calcium, like you talked with Stan about this too. The person that really kind of told me about the calcium gluconate, because they use that for chickens when they're laying soft eggs. So just not a hard shell on the outside. But Dick Bartlett, who's written all kinds of books on reptiles and amphibians, he was the one that told me he used to inject rodents with calcium gluconate and feed them to diamond pythons, and that resolved a lot of the soft eggs that he was getting.
I find that a very interesting concept, like injecting frozen thawed rodents with a vitamin load. It's interesting. I don't know.
You know, I could say, as I mentioned earlier, this is, you know, hands down the most productive season that I've had, you know, so far. And, you know, given I've got, you know, more adult females, that kind of thing. But, you know, all in, it's also coincidentally the first season I've been religious about dusting the mice before every feeding. So they are getting calcium and multivitamins this year that they've not ever gotten before. And so I've got the best season I've ever had.
What did you do? You only did like 62 months cooling, or did you do?
I did like 7 weeks total, something like that.
Yeah. So
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, diet, like you said, you know, it's unfortunate in the industry. I feel like one thing that people don't talk about enough is dieting for animals. And, you know, again, jumping around species to species, with skinks, we had changed our diet about 3 years ago. And we did it because we saw these other people in the industry just with this really simplified diet, and we're like, we're putting way too much effort into this. So we took it down a notch that year and did it like most of the other people were doing it. 2 out of 10 to 3 out of 10 babies we produced that year had extreme kinking. Everything was messy. This year and last year, of course, getting back to our original diet, 1 out of 100 had any kinking issues whatsoever. So like I said, there's always an easier way of doing it, but there are repercussions.
yeah, I mean, go ahead, Ben.
No, you go, man. You're the guest here.
You're good.
No, I was just saying we sort of, the industry as a whole kind of goes down to the least common denominator. Like, what is the least amount of care we can give to the animal to be successful enough to feel like they're, you know, I don't know. I really feel like a little bit more effort should be paid into these quote easy animals that we think, oh, we can just keep them in a rack, never expose them to UV, never give them a vitamin, give them like lab block fed rodents that have never seen the light of day and haven't been supplemented in any way. And, you know, we see that there are results that are acceptable, but it probably could be better.
Well, even with like rodents, so I used to keep arachnids too, and Frank Reitz, I mean, he used to raise his mice outside and had some of the most successful breeding seasons with arachnids, you know, with capes, blackthroats, ackies, gallini. So it really, you know, when you think about it, you know, if you could do it that way, I mean, he probably was getting more supplementation in that fact.
And then we're keeping them in the smallest cages we can possibly do so that we could get, you know, maximize your floor space. You know what I mean? So getting the microhabitats that you might need, like a certain species may need 2 or even 3 different microhabitats in the wild to be successful. And we kind of crush them into like a warm side and a cold side with a set humidity. Is it going to be its best animal in that condition? Probably not.
Right. Well, and even like, so Clint talked me into buying some ARS racks, and I bought them. So I replaced a lot of the animal plastics that I had. And I just noticed like so much like heavy humidity being held in all the tubs. Right. And you got your gap, and then you got the holes on the top, and the first quarter or
third, something like that.
Yeah, and today, so I drilled air holes in the front of every tub, air holes in the back, and air holes on the side. Because I think most of the respiratory infections that we see in snakes are actually bacteria. And it's because of improper ventilation in rack systems. But I'm at Clint's house today, and he's showing me, he's like, I don't need these air holes. And I go, and I'm like, dude, you have no idea. I'm like, come to my house, I'll show you the stuff. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, just curious, what's your humidity in this room? And he looks up because, we had
up there.
His humidity in the room is 40%. The humidity at my house and my basement's 80%.
Yeah.
Not only just taking into account the rack tub that you have, but the room it's in, what are other environmental conditions. I light cycle my room. I don't know if you do.
To a degree. It's funny because when he first told me that he was needing to drill them for because I was considering putting more air holes in those particular racks for my subox, Trans-Pecos rat snakes, because I'm pretty sure that they're too humid. I'm not getting the production out of them that I would expect. And so naturally, okay, let's figure out what their problem is. And that's usually the go-to for that species. Well, when he was telling me he was having to drill them for the Asians, I'm thinking, really? I've got some ball pythons in these ARS racks, and I mean, their mulch dries out. You just need to give it a few days, man. It's going to get there. I've got to mist mine, or they're going to have stuck sheds. And so what he was saying, that just didn't make sense until he came over today, and we figured that out. When you've got a 40, 50 point swing in humidity, there it is. I didn't realize it was raining in his basement. So
that's funny.
But, not many people would have even, been like, well, what is the humidity in this room or anything like that. So, you got to adjust. You got to try to figure out what's going on just to provide the optimal cage for the animal.
And I'll say, and we can only kiss butt once on the episodes. So this will be the once for you, Matt. Something that you've always done with us, and I've seen you do it with other people, which you're really good at, and I think that everybody should do, and I try to do that more often now as well. But when people are like, hey, how do you keep this animal, like how to be successful, you ask a lot more questions. You're like, well, what are you doing with this? Or how's this look? What else do you got going on? What room in the house is like? You ask questions to try to understand the full picture. Whereas a lot of people just want to say, oh, it's a ball python, you just need X, Y, and Z. That's it. And so us as breeders are guilty of that too, where we're just trying to feed off the common general answer so that we can get, go on to the next customer or just try to satisfy. And so you bring up a good point that there's just so many variables, So one of the questions that I ask is, like, when people are like, oh, my ball python's not eating, I think my humidity's right. And I'm like, well, what part of the country are you in? Because we talk to people all over the world, and, you guys are 3 hours apart from each other. That's pretty close compared to, we're here. And then somebody in Florida is calling me saying that they're getting, RIs. And I'm like, well, is it real humid in the room? Like, what's going on? There's more to it. And so something that you always do, and that I appreciate that, is that you always look at the big picture and you go in depth with your explanations. It's not just the care sheet like you were talking about earlier,
Don't break your arm jerking them off, Ben.
Yeah, it's not, not that. I'm just thinking, like, how many times we as breeders and stuff, that people come to us for questions, and that we don't always give we don't ask the right questions, maybe.
I think you're right there. I think there's kind of two pieces to that. One, too often when someone's asking you if they're having a problem with an animal, they instantly want to tell you the temperature's perfect, the humidity's perfect, and they want everything is perfect. No, something's not. You
wouldn't be asking the question if everything was perfect.
Right, everything was perfect, we wouldn't have this. So I think that's an important piece for everyone, all of us, to know. It's not perfect if we're having this problem. But in addition to that, I kind of, with some of the species that we work with, and even some that are more common, when asked the question, so what do I need to do to take care of these, or what kind of setup do I need? I think truly, if all of us as breeders, the more appropriate response, instead of saying what you need to do is this, is the way I do it is this, because I can't tell you that the way I do it is 100% right, because we just don't know. Especially with some of this, we're still figuring out. I can't tell you how to do it. I can only tell you how I'm doing it. And here's the level of success I've had with it to this point. There may be better ways, there may be worse.
Yeah.
I can tell you some of the mistakes I made and things not to do, right?
Yeah.
But here's what is working for me to this degree at the moment. So too often we think we've got it, and we don't fully have it. We really don't.
Dude, that's so true. And the arrogance in the community sometimes, like, it's a lot of times, especially like when some of the stuff that we talk with Matt about a lot, because we're talking about like really weird, obscure species that like maybe not are even established very well in the hobby as captive born. They're being imported and stuff like that. You can look all you want online to even find scientific papers, photos of them in the wild, where one has been cited. There's like this much information out there, and to say that we took that animal out of the wild, brought it over here, stuck it in our tub, gave it a rat, it ate, it crapped out some eggs once, luckily, we know what's going on with it. Like it's very hard to find information about some of the stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been called to my face being told arrogant. I'm like, no, I'm trying to figure it out. I have no idea. I change stuff all the time, but I watch the animal, I react to it. But it's learning, right? I mean, that's why we're all in this. We enjoy watching the animals, seeing them, learning about them.
Definitely have to take more of a scientific approach to it, especially when it's not something that's been established for the last 30 years in the hobby. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you have to be willing to admit errors. It's too many times there, that's one part of the hobby that, man, really just I hate, when if we know that a certain genetic trait in a species carries a problem, don't hide it. Just tell the truth. Be honest, right? If you have had a number of a species die in your care, be honest. Whether it's you just aren't following what others had recommended to do, or this is what takes to really get them established, meaning it is a lot of trial and error when they don't come with a care sheet. When you've got those 3 sentences you were just, mentioning, where it just says, here's where it was found and what color it was. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of mistakes made along the way. And it's really okay to admit that. I think for some that come into the hobby new and may have 1, 2, 5 snakes, to know that someone, loses 10 snakes a year, 10 adults a year to death, they're floored by that. But if you're dealing with 300 snakes, losing 3%, losing 9 in a year isn't really unheard of. It's probably going to happen, and just admitting that, and I think we could really move the hobby further, faster, if we're okay to share the bad information. And by bad, I don't mean not relevant, but the stuff we don't always like to hear as much as we would like to share the good information.
It's funny that you say that, because Ben and I were down with Ryan from Zilla, and we were talking about how like 99% of the hobby has never lost an animal in their life. Nobody will talk about it. Like, and you're like, come on, man. Like, we're like, so yeah, if we were a little more honest with ourselves, like, maybe you're right, we would move forward, but nobody ever wants to talk about that.
Well, go ahead. I was going to say, that's one of the pieces I've been incredibly lucky with some of the individuals I've worked with on joint projects over the years. With Matt, each of us have had to call the other and make that, hey, that animal that we had, it's dead. I don't know why. That's
a tough call to make.
It is.
It's a tough call to make.
Brandon Osborne, who's wildly popular for his urban camo ball pythons. Before that, he was wildly popular for his chondros, well known. And I had his entire collection at my house for a while he was traveling. And over, I think they were there for maybe 2 years. And I remember having to make that phone call that one of the most popular chondros in the country, pictured in books, and everyone knew its name. When I had to call and tell her, she's didn't make it, man. She's upside down here. But with each one of those calls that we've had to make, the other one's like, it happens because we've been doing this so long. We know. I mean, the saying that you've said many times: when you deal with life, you deal with death. That's going to be part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. We've made that call with Matt several times, and Ryan's always like, Ben, I don't want to call him this time.
This last time I was like, dude, I just don't even want to say anything about it. I was so depressed.
But like at the end of the day, like with everything that comes involved, as long as you learn something from it.
Oh, I didn't learn anything. If I knew why that happened, man, I'd be so happy.
Tell you, that's how it was with Volante. I remember telling him after I killed my third one, he's like, all right, man, I'll send you another mail. I'm like, why? You want me to kill that damn thing too?
Let me just send you the whole collection. I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can't touch anything without it rolling on me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure no one wants to talk about that stuff, but it happens, I mean, but again, right, when you're working and you love the animals and that's like your sense of joy, I mean, when you get a phone call like that, it's like, well, what did we learn? How do we move forward? What's the next step? Even like what I posted on those red and black striped snakes, like I've had my fair share of deaths on those, but the reason why we don't see success with a lot of new wild caught animals, or even I think for some captive, is what do most people do? They buy one pair from the same person. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they lose a female. They've got the male, and you see a single male sold.
Mm-hmm.
But no one wants to talk about it, right? It's not. But with the red and blacks, I bought so many. I was just like, if I can get one pair of adults to reproduce, the babies are really the true next step, because the F2 generation is what establishes it in the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's funny. I was even talking to Trixie Barker just a few days ago, and we were talking about ball pythons back in the day when they were coming in from the wild and how troublesome breeding was back then. I'm sure there was a lot of other factors, the way they were keeping them and a few other things, but since people don't fully understand how hard it is to legitimately pull an animal out of the wild and successfully breed it most of the time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, Matt, how many species have you done that with?
Wild caught, all the Porphyracia, mandarins, green bush, rhinos, red and blacks, files.
Are we doing both files?
Yeah, you can do both because both of those were wild caughts. Arcalafe.
I need to pull a foot up. Hang on.
But I mean, I tried to procure as many as possible because I knew, like, I remember ordering from Bushmaster when he would get like the China shipments, Cameron, and I would be like, "Oh, Cameron, you got 3 green bushes, great.
Yeah.
2 of them die. Now I gotta wait till next year to get something that may lay eggs."
So you got to get like 10 specimens to hope that you get a pair.
Yeah, I mean,
out of the wild.
I hate to say it, but that really is the truth, with the files, looking at fecals, looking at lung washes, overall care of the animal. I mean, heck, even some males may not reproduce because of just fertility issues or being improperly kept. Same goes with females. What was it? They used to say mandarins had their gizzard cutout or something over in China, and that's why no one was ever able to produce mandarins as captive borns here, because they would remove part of their intestine or an organ, and that's why they always died.
Huh.
So, I mean, you see these false tales because no one wants to talk about the fact that we're not keeping them properly. We're putting them in like an 85 degree.
I was going to say 80 degrees, and yeah, that's exactly it. Come on, ask them.
Yes.
Yeah. That's something we were talking about with a few species, keeping them too warm, and then their metabolism is higher because they're warm and they're going, and they're not getting enough of the proper nutrients out of their food because of you think that you're giving it to them, but since the temperature is so high, they can't absorb enough of it fast enough, and they need more than what you're actually giving them. And we're sitting here thinking, well, we just fed them, but this should be fine, but really it's a temperature issue, not a food issue almost.
Right. I mean, multiple variables will play an influence in it. Even wild caught animals, right? Like, I'll use Africa just as an example. We could even talk about China or even Europe, but people, when they think of Africa, they think, all right, it's really hot and humid. Realize there's rainforest there. You have different climates in different areas. I mean, some animals will like it cooler than warmer, even in Africa. It doesn't all have to be mid 80s. So that's kind of a key touch. I think, people, like you said, I mean, finding information, learning about new things, it can be tricky. It's a trial and error. That's why you really got to watch the animal. Like, is the animal on the hot spot? Is it on the cold spot?
Exactly. Where's it hanging? Where's it spending its time? Is it moving around, or is it staying in one spot consistent? It tells you a lot. It really does.
Is it arboreal? Is it fossorial? Like, you're talking about the file snakes, like it could be in a really warm, hot place, but like it's, burrowing most of the time in a place that, 6 inches under the ground is probably, 70% humidity. You know what I mean? Anyway.
So part of this podcast, we want to share information. So can you guys each think of it and take a moment to think about this? Pick a species in your head and we'll just dig into one. I know, like, I really like Laticinctus, I know, but we can also talk about something that we learned, Ryan and I learned, that blew our minds, was when we got the conspics for the first time, and you're like, out of the egg, they don't eat for a year sometimes, and you're like,
that's wild. That's still wild to me. That I know that, and it's still wild.
Like, what? So, like, can you each pick a species and we'll just dig into one of them, each, and because I'm sure people are going to listen to this and learn something. Dave talks about it all the time, that we have people on and they learn something from each episode that we do, and that's something that we want to do for people. It's not just about hanging out and having fun, which it always is, but
it is definitely just about that.
Getting a big clock necklace for the next one.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So, really quick before you answer that question, to kind of add one more little thing to what Ben just asked, you guys work with a wide range of different animals. Can you go into a little more detail, like Ben's asking for, but on a species you're working with that you feel is about to become, let's call it a little more popular, something that's going to be a little more readily available? You see more people.
I know that one.
Blue tongue skink. Oh wait, no.
File snakes, baby. Woo!
Oh, let's see. I would say I'm going to answer that with 2 different species. All right.
I'm going to pee. So
Right.
Yes,
We got to tap out. Everybody has
that's
a
the
drink.
first guest we've had happen. That's great.
Everybody has a drink.
It's always usually Ryan and I.
I would say, if of all the species we have, there are several that are getting more and more hot right now. One that would surprise you would be black rat snake morphs. Black rat snakes, the most commonly found species, in North America, and we have found an incredible amount of interest in various morphs and combos of that species. So that's one that I see getting hot. As far as one that would hit the hobby, there is no other species I've had more requests for than the green bush rat snakes.
Really?
And yes. Now, carinata are popular. We get a lot of messages about those. But if I produce 200 green bush a year, I'd sell out of them every year. It's amazing how popular or how many I get asked for. So that would be one. If it gets cracked, I can see it becoming a lot more popular. How many green snakes do we get? There's not really that many to choose from. So one that's that easily, cared for, we'll see. I can see that one getting popular. As far as a species that I guess I'd go down the rabbit hole a little bit with, is one that I'm still attempting to get better and better at, and it would be mandarins. Because there are some tricks and tips with those. And that's going to be, one, they can surprise you on when they're going to breed. I've seen the Zerpals this year, we were seeing eggs that they were posting, in February, then March, something like that. They already had clutches on the ground. Well, now we're going into the end of June, and I just now have gravid females. So you got a range. It can go early, it can go late. They're not as on the female sheds after brumation. She's ready to ovulate. Pair them now. It could be a couple sheds in, and so there's this range there. So don't give up. Pair them all year. If you're going for it. They obviously are a much more secretive animal. Which sucks because they're so pretty. The Xanthics are knockouts, but just the normals, you flip over a rock and this is what it would look like. Gorgeous right off the bat. But they are very secretive animals. So if you're going to work with those, ensure that they have hides. They're going to like to get under things. They burrow. All that. They're going to want the humidity. Don't bother with any kind of heat. They're not really into it. If anything, it's going to be counterproductive. They can give some feeding issues, maybe even regurgitation issues if you're going to get them too warm. Bees can be interesting because they can, if you don't know the tricks to try, they can be real difficult to get feeding. And a couple of those would seem to work very well. One, you need to be able to feed them, whatever container they're in, you need to be able to do it without bothering. And what I mean by that is if you have a lid you're snapping up, or you have to dig them out of something to be able to put a pinky in there, it's probably not going to work real well. It's something you need to be able to put the prey by whatever hide they have, walk away. Don't try to stick around and watch these guys feed. They're too secretive. And leave it there overnight. But if you have babies that are giving issues with feeding, put them in a short cooling cycle.
And how'd you figure that one out, Glenn?
Some guy that pisses during podcasts to tell me this.
When you say short cooling, what?
So it's something like what I've done is, I read it out of Klaus's book, and Matt and I discussed it, for a little bit more tips on it. But
I have that book. I tried to read it, but it's in German. I don't know. Tried real hard. Put it into Google Translate. Didn't work.
So like what I did, I had a handful of babies that were giving me some trouble feeding. Been probably 5 weeks since they hatched. Still hadn't taken a meal for me. So I ended up taking them off, away from any heat. Found a corner in the basement. I was able to shut the room off, shut the any heat that was coming in, put them on the concrete floor. And so while I wasn't able to get them quite down to in the 50s where I would have liked to, was able to get them into the low 60s at that point, rather than the ambient low 70s, that room was in. Leave them there for about 3 weeks, brought them back out, boom, kicked them right into it. That little cooling period for baby mandarins seems to really help if you've got stubborn feeders.
That is tip of the day. It's not something I would have ever thought, to put a baby into a cooling cycle. Like, why would that?
I think that it may have to do with some, like for example, Korean rats, when they typically hatch in the wild, they will gorge and eat quickly because they have a very short window before they go into winter. I mean, it's, fast. And so I think it's probably something to do with them in nature, where they may be hatching close to their cooling season. And so I almost wonder if a lot of mandarins don't even take their first meal until after they go through the entire cooling, their first cooling cycle.
That's
Yeah.
good. Good tip.
Junior, when we talked to Junior from JMG, he had mentioned with Western Hognose the same thing, seeing they're born so late in the season that if he has any picky feeders, he'll put them right into cooling, take them out, and they come out ferocious, ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I think one of the big problems that we see in the hobby is people have non-feeding animals and then they start force feeding them, right? And that causes just so much more stress on the animal. With the advent of like pinky pumps and things of that nature, really force feeding, I think, really decreases that animal's immune system. And instead of thinking like, well, what's going on in this animal's natural range, even the area you live in, right? I mean, it could be snowing outside and I got animals hatching. Well, that animal's probably not going to start feeding just because it's realizing that barometric pressure.
That is a great point that I think so many of us don't really take into account. We talk about temperatures, we talk about humidity, but that pressure does so much. I mean, for those of us who have bred boas, we're familiar with it. You got a storm moving in, you throw everything together because it's happening, right? It affects the colubrids as well. Barometric pressure is absolutely something that does more than we fully comprehend when it comes to reptiles and their behaviors, feeding patterns, breeding patterns, shedding, you name it, it affects them.
I mean, like even for me with cooling animals in the winter, I mean, I wait until the natural cycle starts to come in. And the reason why is the animals will cycle based upon that pressure too. The light cycle, if you have windows in your room, but also depending on your house or apartment or wherever you have your animal, the temperature in that room is going to change drastically too as a result of it. The humidity is going to change in that room resultantly if you have the heat on, the AC on. And it's some things that we miss sometimes in these conversations. Like you guys were talking about, like how I always ask the questions and talk about it because there's bigger pictures. He's peeing, huh?
Yeah.
Ryan pees a lot. Yeah, this is like 2 times an episode he gets up for a pee.
Yeah. I usually do one.
It's become so normal at this point. He doesn't even announce it anymore. He just goes.
Man, he's quicker than me.
I don't talking crap on me. What the heck's going on here? I take my headphones off for 2 seconds. I had my dog trapped in here, and she wanted out, or she was going to get rowdy.
Oh man!
So you were saying with the barometric pressures, go ahead. Keep going. I think you were done, but I was just poking.
Wait. Did I ruin it? I thought you guys were going to keep talking.
I was good. I was done.
Oh, man. I apologize.
It's just another variable. I think sometimes, even though they're in a home, it's still going to pick up on some of those.
It's funny too, where, I can tell you story after story of back when I had several many ball pythons. There'd be times where either Brandon or I would have a ball python that hadn't eaten in 6 months for us. Couldn't get it eaten no matter what. So, Brandon, take this to your house, see what'll happen. Or Clint, take this to your house, see what'll happen. We would drive it home, put it in a tub, throw a rat in, and it would eat it immediately.
That's the old trick of you put them in a container and you put them in your trunk of your car, drive around the block a couple times, and then put them back.
Put them in a container and you just shake them like this.
It's wild. You just never know how any of this is going to affect them, So one place to another.
Drop kick the box a couple of times. Oh wait, I dropped the package.
Yeah.
No, I've had that at shows where let's say there's a show in a city every 3 months, and somebody will come back the second show around and be like, hey, this ball python's not eating. We're really struggling with it. I'm like, no problem. We'll take it back, find something else you like, go from there. Almost 100% of the time, they hand us the animal back. We go to the table next to us, get a live prey, set it in the little deli cup with them, and they eat like every single time. So yeah, pretty weird sometimes. I did that too with a snake in friend in North Carolina. I lived in New York. He had a male that wouldn't eat. Drove it to New York with me, got home, put it in a rack, ate the first night.
Yeah. Well, and there's like someone who will buy a baby ball python and then give you a shout, tell you it's not eating. And you ask, well, what are you keeping it in? A 20-gallon aquarium. Put it in a 6-quart container and it's going to eat immediately. Trust me.
Yeah.
That's what they're comfortable in right there. So it's
2 questions for any non-feeder on a first-time owner of a ball python. How big's the aquarium, and do you have a light on top? If I get a light on top or a big aquarium, that's the answer right there.
Yep. Hands down. Hands down.
Yep. So, Matt, now you got to pick a species. Clint talked about mandarins.
I mean, we could talk about files, but I think you guys. I think that's. I mean,
I would love that.
Brian
love that.
pushing that market. I mean, he must be a stock owner in them.
Listen, you're the file genius over here. I just buy your stock. I don't know.
To be honest with you, over like the past couple of years, an animal that I was kind of intrigued by that's been getting a lot more response are the hunter flower rat snakes or red-headed rat snakes.
Love that.
And it's interesting just because, I mean, we're starting to see some more mutations more common, right? We're seeing the hypos, we're seeing the aberrants. We'll probably be seeing some hypo aberrants pretty soon. We're probably going to be seeing some AMLs available pretty soon. In terms of all of that, I mean, it really brings about a species. But I also think, they've just been so misunderstood, and they're a large colubrid. Some people might think they're drab, but when you see that animal in person, that beautiful green, browns, the red, and even working with them, they're not a feisty animal.
They definitely have a bad rap for being really, really bitey. And I've held a handful of them and never been struck at.
The ones that we picked up they're beautiful, and they haven't tried to bite me at all.
Now, the worst part about them is they're musk.
Yeah, that's not great.
They do stink.
You got to have a thing for stinky things if you want to get into colubrids. Like,
I'm afraid of it. That's for sure.
But it's like a red musk too, and it sticks on your hand. You'd be like driving down the road. You'd be like, "Hey, smell that."
Smell it.
There are
They've
too
done
many,
that many times.
there are too many species that have this bad rap for being aggressive. And truthfully, I think it's just not understanding the body language of the animal in the first place to avoid it ever striking at you. I mean, Texas rat snakes, you hear that all the time, that they're no, I've never been bit by anything but a baby leucistic Texas rat while popping it. Any adults never even attempted to strike at me. I'm not saying they're not out there or that there wasn't something that caused that, but I just think there's too many species that they get that reputation, and it's because, I mean, if you're too timid and you're coming in too slow, that scares an animal. They notice you coming and start watching at that point. So
you just got to yank them up.
Exactly.
I think that scared people on them is, and I think there's a little bit of a change going in the hobby right now, because we've talked about this. I've talked about it with you guys too. It seems like people are actually genuinely keeping animals for their interest in the animal, right? We're seeing a little bit more of a shift towards that. And with that, I mean, with the hunter flower rats, I mean, they do have a longer sexual maturity. I mean, you're looking at 4 to 5 years for a sexually mature animal. You're only going to get one clutch out of them a year. They breed later in the season. Some people, I think, miss ovulations with the animals just by not having the animals together jointly during the right times. But their eggs are so cool, too. I've posted some pictures before. They always knock out one side of the polar end of the egg. Their eggshells are so hard. I mean, and these animals are able to just crush right through the side of it. They don't cut it, anything. They just push right through it directly. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild. And their head, I mean, the longness of the head, everything. I mean, they're a beautiful animal. Just they're natural animals. The natural variety of them. You know, I'm not really producing just normals anymore, just because, right? I have a project and a line of where I want to go. I mean, people have them. It's just it could be they're not housed properly. Temperature's not proper. Feeding's not proper. Sexual maturity probably isn't there, maybe. But there are a handful of people that have bred them. You know, it's just repeat breeding, you know, and how you actually get to it. Man, check out that.
They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I've always had a thing for redheads too, so.
I don't know anybody's going to argue with you.
So, you know, your guys' comment too about the industry, and, you know, people, you could say, almost genuinely caring a little more about they're working with. Yeah, I feel that a lot of people get into the industry with because of ball pythons. They see money signs. They see a full-time job possibility. You even saw at one point a lot of colubrid guys getting out of them and moving into ball pythons because it was just such a lucrative way to breed animals. And suddenly when things started leveling out a little bit,
We can hear you.
Still here. I'm still here. I'm still here.
There he is.
But I am going to relocate to the car. My battery's going to low. But nonetheless, you know, people, especially ones who switched over to them, or people that really stuck it out because they enjoyed reptile breeding, they kind of started going more with what they were passionate about. They kind of got away from ball pythons. They used their ball python money to put in other projects, which again is good for the whole community. And, you know, it was a good shift. Like, you guys are talking colubrids. I feel like there's more people moving to colubrids now than ever before. And again, I feel there's a lot of people just kind of going back to the roots, what made them happy in the beginning and what they'd rather work with.
You know, and I think that there's been kind of the perfect storm for this to happen, really. There are multiple things that hit at the same time that really have now catapulted the colubrid side of our hobby back in. And that's, you know, one, we saw, I don't want to call it the fall, but the decline of the ball python market. It's obviously still there, and there's still a lot of money that people are making from it. But you saw a large shift from interest because, let's face it, we didn't have reptile shows anymore. We had ball python shows, right? You know, that's what was on every single table. And so there was a certain level of interest that over time, you got tired of seeing it. It's like the New England Patriots winning the Super Bowl. You get tired of seeing it, right?
I don't know. I'm never tired of it. I'm a Bills fan. I want people to win a lot. I'm all about winners. Oh, fucking Okay, I'm relocating to the car. I got to get my charger in. I'll be back. You guys talk about the Patriots some more.
So, you know, so that's one step of it is we saw the ball python market starting to take its shift, you know, where it kind of took a hit. At the same time, or actually even before that was happening, you had, well, long before that was happening, to his point previously, you had so many colubrid breeders kind of move away from colubrids or significantly downsize their collections of that, right? So now you already have fewer colubrids being produced. You have interest starting to shift to it, but before that interest was shifted, the Asian market, and what I mean is not Asian species, meaning actual China, Japan, their interest in colubrids being bred in North America spiked. I mean, it seemed like first off, it was anything white, black, or black and white. So you had California king snakes, anything leucistic, Mexican black kings, all those were being bought up completely. Like to where, I mean, no one really noticed you couldn't find them over here anymore because no one was looking yet, right? Yeah. So that continued to spike, and that, you know, ended up going into Hondurans, bull snakes, you know, all the others started to fall in line with that too. So then as it shifted to where, okay, let's look at, you know, we want colubrids again. Now I want some more king snakes. I want some more milk snakes. I can't find them because this whole storm kind of happened, at once. And that made prices shoot up for colubrids, which instantly sparked a lot more that were either you are suddenly interested in it for the first time, or you now have a reason to be able to do it. Again, if you loved it before, it can now pay for itself again, where you couldn't give away the babies, at one point. Mexican Black Kings, we see people throwing a fit about that over and over, where that was a $35 snake at one point. That's all I would pay. And then now, last year, $200 a pop, easy, and selling out of them. So it's the whole supply and demand thing. And I think that's really, which is good. It's good because when you see a strong market for such a wide range of species, it's better for our hobby as a whole, hands down, it's good for us. I'd much rather pay $50 more for an animal than what I would have 10 years ago to see the hobby where it's at right now, in the direction it's going, where we're getting more diverse, and it's not just 1, 2, 3 species hobby.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, even like ball python keepers, it's brought so many people into this hobby that may have never been in the hobby even. It's done good too, as a result of it. But I think one of the things that we have started to see is, more people kind of keeping what they want. I've even seen a shift from people keeping rack systems to keeping cages too as well.
Yeah. No, honestly, and I've said this in the past, the ball pythons, there's a lot of negativity that goes towards it, but the reality is it's, it helps everybody in the industry. It provides more money for Freedom Breeder and ARS with all the ball python racks they sell to design other tub styles, whether it's a colubrid or a larger snake. There wouldn't be as many shows if there wasn't that many ball python breeders, which gives the opportunity for more people who work with other species to go vend these shows. There's a lot of different things from the industry that, started because of ball python money. But again, it's not everything. They're not for everybody, but, they really are a staple. And, being pretty heavy in the mix in ball pythons myself, I just don't see that market slowing down anytime soon, which again is good for everybody. But no, like you said, it's nice seeing things a lot more diverse at the shows. Even I get bored of walking a lot of shows because, you're just going to see a lot of ball pythons, and I could see a lot of ball pythons all day. I don't want to travel to see more. But no, you go to cities like, Denver, Colorado, or you go to like California, like outside of LA, and, cities where people tend to have a little more money, they tend to work with really unique species, very obscure stuff you never see. They're not so much focused on making a dollar there. They just want to work with what piques their interest.
Yeah, right. No, I completely agree with you too. If the ball python craze really hadn't hit, I almost wonder how many products are on the market today that wouldn't have been. Like you mentioned, ARS and Freedom Breeder and what they're able to do. I even remember a comment that really, it stuck out to me, and it was recent, probably within the past 6 months. A comment on Facebook, Mike Schultz from Outback had commented on somebody's post and said, it's ball python money is what allows us to bring in these other species that you like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And that's it because, so many of the people that are able to bring different species from other countries and get them over here for us to even attempt to establish them in the hobby in the first place, they wouldn't be able to if they weren't paying the bills from ball python money. So I completely agree with you. If it wasn't there in the first place, there's a lot of things we wouldn't have right now that we get to work with.
Yeah, especially they're a byproduct, just because they all go out of go. So the fact that the ball pythons are going, they're like, well, you got to take 50 files or whatever. The whole import-export aspect of the industry, I think, is really kind of fascinating too, because I think people don't realize that, to get that one really cool animal, they have to take so much other stuff that is just it may not survive. It may not, and it's costly, so.
A lot of people poo-poo the whole, the ball python craze, and everybody just got into snakes for the money because the ball pythons went crazy. But like, when you take that one species that casts that broad net out there to all these people, yeah, everybody likes money. Like, I don't know anybody that I know that doesn't like money. Okay, but when you take the percentage of those that are only in it for the money and the percentage that you got that earn the money, and they decided, wow, reptiles are awesome at the same time, maybe 30% of those guys were only in it for the money, but 70% of them decided, wow, reptiles are awesome. Ball pythons got me into it. The money got me into it. But then I discovered this whole new thing that I love. You know what I mean? So it's not that everybody wants to say, oh, ball pythons, it was only the money. Well, money catches everybody. You get a percentage of hardcore people out of it that boost the hobby totally. So, you get the riffraff with everything, but.
Well, and, I think I don't want to say market saturation, but think about so many people have ball pythons now, right? Those that were just solely doing it for money can move out of
pretty quickly. There were a lot of collections for sale over the last 10 years.
It's really unrealistic expectations, and partnerships don't always work in this hobby. And when somebody new gets into it, they usually find a friend to drag in with them. And like you said, having to make that phone call about an animal not making it, having to make the phone call that they're not making enough money to pay the bills for what they're doing. Like, it's already hard enough, but then when you split it down the middle, it gets even harder. So
I feel like Ben and Dave have been having side conversations. I don't know.
Sorry, no, I think this thank you for muting me, bud. You muted me, or is my phone fucking with me right now?
No, I'm muting you because your phone's giving a feedback.
We're removing you from the feed, Dave. You're you're in the pot here.
Am I still getting feedback?
It's hitting a little close to home. I don't know.
What does feedback even mean? I thought
your microphone is giving us feedback when you talk or when you're muted. We don't hear the feedback. So
is it any better?
Nope.
No.
Describe the sound to me, and let me try to correct it.
It's a bunch of chirps that happen after you talk.
I think it's just you might need to hop out and back in. That's all.
Back? Oh, you can't even hear me because you're fucking muting me again, aren't you, mother?
No, I didn't mute you. Ryan might have. I didn't.
All right. Well, I'm gonna leave and come back for the 15th time. Bear with me.
Yeah. I was muting him, and every time I muted him, he would go. I was like, I'm only muting you. I wanted to jump in and be like, I'm only muting you because I'm getting the feedback. And
definitely him. I was curious, but there's a choppiness that happens after he talks.
Yeah, it just happened to be.
There he is. Whoops. Oh, I'll let you do that, Ben.
All right, it's gone. You're good.
So we're just gonna have a still picture of him for the rest of this.
Yeah, see, if you would have said, "Hey guys, it sounds like you're masturbating," I could have just stopped masturbating. But instead, you made me leave the group and come back again, and I just don't understand what we're doing here.
Hey, that's what we pay you for. Like,
to not masturbate?
No, to masturbate.
Hey, we're all getting excited.
Now it's a party. Right? I didn't realize it's a cam show. Right?
Yeah, we always get here after a while. This is just all part of it.
Yeah.
Listen, people want levity. They don't want, we're not reading a textbook here. We're having fun, hanging out.
Talking about ball pythons and really what it's done to the hobby and the market, I would say, because to your point, if someone's in it for the money, great, as long as they're doing it right, because all of us, are here. There's no way we could work with nearly the size collection and the animals we do if we weren't making money off of it too. It's got to be. I think the one thing I noticed with that section of the hobby that you don't really get as much of from really anyone else, you get people that get in and get in too big too quick. And I really don't see that as much in colubrids or really any other species but ball pythons. where they've got 30 ball pythons and they've never produced a clutch yet, kind of thing. You know, and the next thing you know, they can't afford to feed their animals. You know, they don't even have caging for everything, that type of thing. I think that's, for me, that's the part that is the downside, is the negative piece to the hungry for money, you know, piece of ball python industry. But, you know, I all in, it's done more good than bad, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's fun to buy a snake. It's not fun to buy a cage. It's fun to buy a snake. It's not fun to buy a rodent. You know, that all comes into play. And, you know, you also got to remember too, with ball pythons, unlike other species, you could buy 5,000 ball pythons and not have two alike. Where in colubrids, you know, you're a little more limited. You know, don't get me wrong, corn snakes, quite a few mutations there. But yeah, with a lot of other ones, there's just not a real broad, you know, spectrum of colors to play with. So never enough to have one or two. You got to have 40 or 50 because you got to have as many colors as possible to keep up with people.
Kind of interesting, just to go on a tangent. That's all right.
I haven't grown one of those.
Go ahead.
Good.
We're good.
Okay. But like, I've sold animals to people, and they sent like the no feeding things, and I'm like, send me a picture of your enclosure, show me like how you have it set up, everything. They have it in a sterilite tub with a heat mat taped to the side of it. I'm like, this isn't going to work. Or, you know, even in the industry, I mean, we see how many collections start on fire. We see how many people buy a $3,000 animal and don't even have proper thermostats for it. I mean, you see so much of this, and it's really kind of sad, in my opinion, just because when you really enjoy working with those animals, you want to make sure that, like, when I sell an animal, it's going to a good home. But a lot of people don't properly maintain or check their heat tape. They don't check their thermostats. They don't verify that the thermostat is actually outputting the correct wattage to their heat tape. Their heat tape might have moisture buildup on it, which can start a fire. You know, even off of that, I mean, we see that more and more commonly, and a lot of it is just by cutting corners, right? You know, you want this awesome animal, but then you cut the corners for everything else that goes inside of it. You know, recently I got an email about, hey, can you do a payment plan on a $150 animal? And I just told the guy, I'm good. That animal will stay here. Because in my mind, if you can't afford a $150 animal, you can't provide the proper care for the animal after the sale. You know, husbandry items, food, even going to a vet if needed. You know, those are all big picture things.
Yeah. I think that, and so you make a good point. I think that also sometimes people, and so we're not discouraging people that are like, hey, I want to put a deposit on one because I want that one, but I don't have everything set up. I need to hone it in and stuff like that. So there's that, which is totally different. But
different story. Yeah.
But yeah, we've had the same situations where people are like,
we've had people say, hey, can you do a payment plan on a $50 animal? And you're like, it's a little tough. I don't know.
and shipping's $65. So
yeah,
right. Well, and that's like the interesting part about it is usually when people ask me about payment plan, well, I go, well, pitch it to me, and then they pitch it to me, and it's like $150 over 2 months, and it's like,
yeah, right.
But I mean, you know, like talking about thermostats and things like that. One of the coolest things I've just recently bought were those Wi-Fi Herp stats.
I'm interested to talk about those. What is your experience with them?
I really like them. And I've had situations where it has faulted out. The temperature itself went over the maximum temperature. So it just shuts off everything and you have to reset it. But inside of there, and you can access it on your phone, it sends you an email, everything. And there's different safety on there. So you can set it off a temperature. You can put min, max items on it, but it'll send you an email alert, tell you everything about it. But one of the interesting parts, no one I don't know about you guys, but when I get this, I'm like, I'm going to play around with this, and then I'm going to go read the manual.
Yeah.
Like a month later. So I read the manual, and what was interesting about it was talking about why thermostats fail. And I guess one of the couplers inside of it, if you have multiple power surges, that coupler will actually permanently fail, and the response from the probe to the thermostat isn't correct and can actually cause a fire. I had never seen that before documented. No one has ever talked about that in my experience of talking about things, learning about things. But playing around with it, I mean, even looking at graphs, looking at how temperature, everything responds back. But I do like the part that if something goes wrong, I get an email alert.
So this is a very intriguing one. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The reason I'm intrigued, started building my first walk-in incubator today. Have to do it. We filled up way too fast. Just had to be done. I have the vivarium. Vivarium, God, I can't remember which one. It's the real high-powered one for putting it on a space heater. I happen to have one of those around. I plugged it in today, let it run for a little while, unplugged it when I came here. When I go home, I'm going to plug it back in, keep an eye out for the night. The rheostats, I think a couple people will daisy chain those together. So if one fails, the other one kicks back in. Jeff Ronnie did that with his entire collection in his building. That's been an outside thought. The Herp stat, and you guys can tell me, because Herp stat's probably the one that I know the least amount about. Is there a Herp stat that can actually run a oil space heater?
Yes, I believe there is one.
There's a high-powered
Wi-Fi capabilities is the big thing, because again, we're out of town. If something's going wrong when I'm gone, it'd be nice to correct it and not have to call my neighbor who doesn't even like snakes.
Neighbors are a problem.
Yeah, but I don't think that high power one, they haven't released any. They basically released like a trial, and it's just a 2-port output thermostat, but they haven't done anything high power yet with that Wi-Fi capability yet. But I mean, for someone like myself, I travel for work. Clint travels for work. Stan travels for work. You know, and if you're out of town and you're like, and you got home and your thermostat malfunction, that can be a big problem.
Yep. Jeremy Stone did a BOA video a few years ago, and he put it in the video where he was at the Ham Germany show, and when he was gone, one of his grow-up racks had malfunctioned a thermostat and overheated, and that was around the time the leucistic boas are worth God knows how much money, and it was literally like an entire rack system of VPIT positives and fire boas, which essentially is a het leucistic, all died. Saying that, he even made a comment in the video, I don't really like talking about this kind of stuff, but again, you should talk about this kind of stuff. And he had the animals laid across the floor, and he's like, this happened, and here's what we did to correct it. We bought these thermostats that will send a text message to our phone, and so on and so forth. We buy those deals on Amazon. They're about $100, $120, where you just throw a probe in a room, and it goes through Wi-Fi through your phone, and if it goes a degree or 2 degrees or anything off, it sends a text to your phone immediately letting you know you got a problem. We have that in different sections of the building. So again, even if I'm out there, we got a lot of animals. We don't touch every animal every single day. So it kind of gives us a general idea how different areas of the building are doing, even without having our hands on it.
Right.
One of the things that's really cool is if you couple those with smart outlets, like say that your thermostat fails and it's going high and you have a Wi-Fi enabled, or it sends you an alert, you can go in and jump into your smart outlet and just shut the power down to that outlet. And it's better, in my opinion, to have, an animal a little cooler for a couple days until you get back and can rectify it than, cooking. You know what I mean?
Hands down, absolutely. They can bounce back from being cool a lot easier than they can bounce back from being hot.
Yep.
That's another thing too. Whenever let's say we're in Texas selling snakes and it's 100 degrees outside, we always tell people, if you're comfortable in the car, it's comfortable. Do not fucking put it on the dashboard. Do not put it by a heater vent. Don't do anything like that. If you're happy, he's happy till you get home. Because again, I had a show one time where somebody came back in, they're like, "Oh, the snake just died," and I took it out of the container and it literally burnt my hand. It was so hot, and I'm just like, "Well, this is the mistake that was made," and we still worked something out because I felt bad, but yeah, like I said, that's one thing about reptiles people don't understand. They always assume it's got to be hot. It's got to be hot. Your best days of field herping is not when it's hot out. When it's rainy, it's cloudy, you go flipping, you have great days. You find more out and about. Hot days, you don't find shit. Everything's hiding from the heat.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Sorry, was that a tangent? I think that was my first tangent. Does that count?
That's good info, man.
Oh, wait, we all have to get one. It's about time, man.
Yeah.
We saved your life today.
Son of a bitch.
So,
all right, Clint.
Is it my turn or your turn?
No, it's not your turn. It's my turn.
All right.
Clint, I want to know your top species for the season. Thing you're most jazzed up about.
Most I'm jazzed up about?
Yeah, man.
Oh, I would say, again, I'm going to say mandarins, but specifically, this should be the first year that I produce exantic mandarins.
Nice.
And so I'm pretty excited for those.
Okay.
One this year.
And Matt, most jazzed up?
Red and black striped snakes.
It's a broken record with you. Listen, you're gonna get bored with those in a couple months, and look, my shipping address, so just let me know.
I know, I got you, man.
It's just an old song that you're singing. These red and blacks. I don't know.
Hogan.
Oh yeah, I keep messing with him. Like, listen, what happens if something goes wrong at your place and they all die? Yeah, you have
a good point. You have a good point.
Send me a pair or two.
Listen, you got to diversify your bonds, man.
I know. Don't worry, they'll be coming out. So in fairness and in conversation and things like we're talking about here, I did sell one pair of them, right?
I saw that.
Ryan McVeigh?
I was real shitty when I saw that.
It's not like people are doing like.
So, and I say this just because of our whole conversation here. In conversation, talked about it, messaged me privately, and before even asking about like for sale, anything like that, that gentleman had actually purchased one of the first pairs that Fascination Herp had brought in, and they were wild caught and they died, right? Mm-hmm. Which again, you buy one pair, it's a shoot, right? But the one thing that I was the most impressed about is the guy actually wrote like a 12-page document outlining natural history, where they were from, had maps, thermal gradients and stuff like that. And it was like, hey, am I really far off on this stuff? Or is this kind of what you're seeing? So, talking about doing research ahead, I mean, that was pretty wild to actually see someone take that time and put it in the effort, because you guys know as well as I do. I mean, sometimes you can't find that information very like one spot, right?
Here I've been just putting effort into like a friendship. I took the wrong path to getting a pair, I guess.
Soon, I promise.
Yo, you were the side bitch, all right? That's fine.
But that's cool. I mean, but the snakes are doing really well. I've talked about it. They are reproducing in captivity. We're seeing some new things going on. Some other things I've been playing around with that I don't know yet if it's good or bad. I'm just watching them. But that's like one of the most jazzed up things that I got going on this season. Yep. So we should see probably like 6 more clutches of those coming up this season.
6?
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome.
So
that's amazing, man.
Yeah, so it would be cool to see that kind of come through.
Absolutely. Really cool.
So, can I get on that list ahead of Benjamin and Ryan? Because, I'm just going to have them. No competition,
Mustache, you're breaking up. I don't know what's going on here. No, he's gone. I
You
don't know
son
what
of a bitch. Oh, you motherfucker.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Right.
Cool, man. I'm assuming you've been drinking. Your hands are probably
gonna
all
come
over the
back
place
up
up there.
some
It's cool. Thanks, everybody.
You've been drinking.
I have been drinking iced tea.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, now again, I ask this question a lot because I'm always excited about new things all the time. Do you guys have your eyes on anything new you're looking into picking up for your collections?
We talk about this a lot, actually.
Are we allowed to know about this, Matt?
Hey, here's the deal, man. Only 100 people are going to watch this podcast, and most of them are not going to make it to the end. Whatever you say is probably still going to be a secret after today.
We're at 2 hours. Nobody's listening to this, okay?
Yeah,
right.
You get an hour out of people, man.
People watch Matt.
You guys came to my house. What was it? Hey, we're just going to do a 10-minute video.
Yeah.
It was an
No one
hour.
listened after 10 minutes.
An hour later, and 18,000 views. Matthew Moose collection tour went into the books. Has as many views as Billy from Mutation Creation. Think about that, ball python people.
I would say, as far as, for my personal collection, there's nothing that's currently on my radar. I mean, obviously there are things here and there that I'm like, that'd be neat, but there's nothing I have told myself, yeah, this year I'm going to go get those. I'll let Matt obviously answer for himself there. As far as jointly, because we really enjoy doing projects together. It's, it makes it more interesting. And we've kind of talked about, if we add anything else at this point, it's either got to fit in to what we're already doing with some of the projects we have. Like maybe we pick up more keratonomorphs, things like that. But we actually just were discussing earlier that, we kind of are interested in moving to maybe another species. But if we don't have anything picked out, but we want it to be something that's not here. We want to bring something else to the hobby that we feel would, not just that it's odd and unusual, but let's face it, it's got to be the right color for people to want to have it, right? It's got to be appealing. It's it can't be a strict lizard feeder and not able to get it off of that for it to really to be able to take off. But that's it. We want something that we're going to have to get shipped in. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So, completely random. How do you guys feel about house snakes?
I like them.
I love them too, man. Like, I've been staring at them a lot lately, and I think there's a breeder from Africa that moved out here about 4 or 5 years ago, and he brought his entire collection with him. We're talking, I think, 500, 600 animals he showed.
Wow. There's a certain species, forgive me, I'm going to butcher it. I want to say Nubia or Nibia or do you know which ones I'm referring to with the large eyes?
Nambia.
I mean, those, I think they're just, wow, beautiful. I think that is overall, that is an entire many, obviously there's different species or subspecies, underrated in the hobby. I'm surprised they are not more popular. They're so easy. Most of them are pretty, easy care, and they've got some morphs as well. And so I'm really surprised they're not more popular compared to where they're at.
Well, and going into, like some of the house snakes and stuff of that nature, file snakes are considered a house snake.
My man.
But no, I'm friends with Rolf from Ultimate Exotics too, and the interesting part is there's so much new morphs, different things coming out with those house snakes. I think there's definitely a lot of future potential there, because they're easy animals to keep too. They're not very challenging. So if you were looking for an animal that's multi-clutched, easy to keep, is hardy, it's a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, a friend of mine in North Carolina, Limey Bastard,
My
way back,
man, Limey.
fucking Limey, late 2000s, he had albino house snakes, and I was always like, man, these are the coolest little things ever. And I'm gonna figure out this breeder's name at some point during this. Hopefully, I'll have to send you guys a link. But I was on basically Boa's webpage, scrolling down, and on his feed, he happened to show that guy's business page and how he acquired some animals. And I'll be honest, I think this guy has every locality, every mutation, every triple, quadruple recessive already on the ground. Like, this guy is above and beyond with the project, that I feel like just having that in the United States is going to be enough fuel for the fire to really make that species take off here.
So, it's interesting, like talking about having a species take off in the hobby. And Clint and I, we always talk about this. And I think one of the things is obviously like color, right? It's got to be attractive. But the other thing that I think actually pushes it is if the breeder is a good photographer. Because if they're not a good photographer, it makes it challenging to bring something new to the hobby too as well.
A good picture will sell an ugly snake.
Yeah.
An ugly picture will make a good snake sit, and not move it. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. A lot of people don't give their animal, or they don't do justice to their animals a lot of time. They're
Right.
their own worst enemy, not taking a good picture.
Yep.
When I buy a new phone, I just ask whatever the best camera is on the market, I'll take that phone. I don't give a shit about anything else about it. I just want a really good camera on it for when I'm playing around in the building, taking little pictures here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
I was gonna say, what do you guys think about sunbeam snakes?
Fuck sunbeam snakes.
That's it. Dave's out. He's done.
Well, we've talked about this, guys. I really like them. I think they're very underappreciated because they come in wild caught by the numbers, and they're natural iridescence. I mean, even the babies look so unique. But you don't see anyone working with them because people think they're cheap import, is basically the reason why.
Well, the problem is you're right. They are a very, strictly anyone you get them through, I think we're talking about a $12 animal in a 20 lot. And that makes it very difficult. And, even in, show the baby pictures though, because the babies are the best looking.
Share just a tap.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
That's right. We're going to get there, buddy.
We're gonna get there, Dave. You're right. We will get there. There it is.
That's the same fucking picture. I want to see a baby.
Yeah, but I was trying to make it bigger. Everything's better if it's bigger. Ask your wife.
Yeah, I got virtually the same effect that time as I got the other time. Oh, no, sorry. Dog just went running by. The kids are back.
Another
Oh,
raccoon.
no.
Yeah, I'm in the car this time, so it's less creepy, and I'm not wearing a mask like last time.
Another raccoon. That's cool.
So this is something we didn't tell you guys. Dave doesn't have great service at his house, so he goes to this abandoned bowling alley, which is cool.
I was wondering what it was with the parking lot. I could see the cinder block, beams back there and whatnot.
Yeah. It's funny, but there's always something happens there. He has dogs, or there was a thunderstorm once. There's
the dog's
kids
gone. You missed
hanging
it.
out.
Yeah, shit. There was literally just 3 kids chasing a dog.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It looked rabid, too.
Are you sure it wasn't the raccoon from the other day?
Oh, yeah, you missed that, guy. It's we're just hanging out, and this raccoon practically approached me. Real moment. We weren't even recording. We're just hanging out talking after the interview, and there's this raccoon creeping on me.
Honestly, that raccoon had some attitude. It was.
Yeah. He was asking for money and stuff. It was crazy.
It was disrespectful.
So, here, let me just play out the scenario today, which just went down. So this pretty beefy dog just came running over here. And, it'd be the kind of dog that I'd probably be on top of the car hiding from right now because it scares the shit out of me. It looked like there might have been some pit bull in it. So these 3 little kids chase it down, and then they just gave up, and they went that way, and the dog went that way. So I don't know what the fuck's going on. I fucking said a baby picture. You put another adult up on
I am doing my best, Dave.
Just okay. I'm not gonna tell you how to do your job, but I would type in baby sunbeam snake and see what Google does.
I would type in $15 an hour, bitch. Okay?
I don't understand the joke.
I'm just saying you don't pay me enough. That's what I'm saying.
I pay you plenty of compliments when we're not on the air, bud. Isn't
You're
that
right.
enough?
Dave's a sweetheart. I apologize.
Oh, come on.
Daddy's gone.
I don't know what's going on anymore. I think my phone wants to die, but it's plugged in, so it's kind of just like, hey, buddy, it's over, but it's not. Maybe, I don't know. But
even going off your comment about, like $12 for a 20 lot or whatever, the hard part with it is once Indonesia closes off, you're never going to see them because no one has a status. It's the same thing with files. What if all the wild caught animals stop coming in? You're done.
I used to pay attention to Madagascar.
Yep.
And I'd be like, okay, so if I know they're going to shut a species down, maybe it's time to get into it. But then I just never did. I always had all these cool things I wanted to get, and I never fucking bought a thing. Okay, it's a teenager, but we're going to count it.
Man, I just cannot win on this one. That's it. I'm
I
done.
want that solid white head. That thing had that nose thing going on. I'm just not getting the full effect.
Solid head.
But
even talking skinks, like, how, the Irian Jayas, Indonesian stuff, Maruks, all that, like, they're intriguing, but when you have so many coming to the country still, you're always going to compete with the guy that's going to have them for $150 or $200 on their table, where you're putting the time in and you want to be able to charge 3 or 4, and it just doesn't happen. Don't worry, as long as you can hear me, that's all that matters.
We can hear you.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting because
things are happening.
when I was like 16 or 17 years old, I used to breed the Solomon Island prehensile-tailed skinks,
Yeah.
and they were so awesome, man. But like, I would go into pet stores like Chicago Reptile House and stuff like that, and I'd be like, "Hey, would you guys want to buy some babies?" And they're like, "No, we get these for $10 a piece." I'm like, "Cool."
Well,
Yeah.
so I don't know if you guys have followed those at all, but the price went up to $1,200 5 years ago. But then they discovered them on another nearby island, and the price went back down again. Not cheap, but it did come down from that $1,200 mark.
Right. Well, what's so interesting about like those animals, especially, is they're island specific. So if you don't have them from the same island, they will not reproduce.
Interesting.
And that was one of the parts why a lot of people struggled with them too.
Wow.
I believe it. That's like you guys may know with shinglebacks in the wild, it's been proven that they bond for life.
Mhm.
So for the longest time, the hobby early on, when people were getting them in quite a bit, they were having no success because they were getting adults in. It's just such a risky animal to work with. The chances of actually buying a pair as a baby, which again is impossible because nobody has them. And we talked about it, $10,000 a pop is the only price I've ever seen on those things.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think I ever will. Like, they're very cool. I really like them. I might have one as a pet. Probably go with the gold field ones, one with the war paint, the orange, the white, the black, and that'd be about it.
You might as well go with the, most awesome, rarest one that you could get.
Oh yeah, and you guys probably follow. There's a breeder down in Florida. I think it's TO or T something. They posted pictures of a shingle about 2-3 months ago that had a really unique, like aqua kind of color to it.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And I think they actually produced them themselves. I don't know if they mixed different ones to get that color exactly, but yeah, it was a very beautiful aqua greenish kind of, I don't know if I fucking have to explain aqua. If you don't know what aqua means, don't fucking watch the show.
It's
Yeah, I'm describing colors now. We're not to that point yet.
All right.
Yeah, again, those people stopped watching the show 40 minutes ago. Anyone who's still listening now, I don't have to describe aqua.
They're hardcore. The people that are listening now, they want to know. Okay.
Yeah. William Philippek is still watching right now. That might be it. He's the only guy I know that watches them to the end every time. You guys have anybody? Okay.
Randy Mopius got those Goldfield shinglebacks, man.
Okay. He doesn't watch the show, but he has Goldfields. That we're talking about now?
He's got a pair of them.
Really?
If you really want the holy grail of shinglebacks, you better start kissing up.
I just don't think it's worth it.
There you go.
So why don't we get back to Matt and Clint here?
Oh, sorry, man.
Matt,
Sorry. That's another thing that happens towards the end. We just ignore the guests and start fucking with each other and talking. But again, most people don't realize that. They don't make it.
Ignoring anybody. Listen, I gotta go. My dog's freaking out. I gotta handle this. I'll be right back. You guys,
Right.
yourselves.
Okay, make sure to take a pee while you're up. Double down.
Listen, I'll give you a topic. Duran Duran is neither Duran nor Duran. There you go.
That's,
Yeah, we're not going to talk.
No?
yeah, it's an old story.
Am I too old? I'm too old. That's
Saturday
fine.
Night Live.
I think you're younger than us.
Treating you like a toddler. He's like, when you're up, you got to go potty. Why don't you go ahead and try to go potty? Just try to go potty.
Give a little shake.
So
So here's the thing. I don't want to. Where the fuck are you guys from?
It's a good
Yeah, we're going to
question.
really simplify this conversation. Yeah. What did you guys say?
So I live just north of Indianapolis, and
Okay.
I live in Evansville, Indiana, which is the southernmost tip, right where Indiana, Kentucky, and Illinois touch.
Okay. Guy with the colorful shirt. How far are you from Fort Wayne?
2 hours.
Ah, fuck it. Okay. Sorry. I'm driving all the way to like the other side of Pennsylvania, and then I'm playing hockey in Fort Wayne next weekend. You know, I'd invite myself over awkwardly, but I just don't think we're there yet.
It's about 2 hours. I cover Indiana for work as a state, and so I drive all over the state.
Okay.
So you're
That's
playing
good
at the
conversation. Oh, what was that?
you're playing at the arena downtown Fort Wayne.
No, I don't play real hockey. I play roller hockey.
Gotcha. So you can't
we don't
stand
talk.
with your skate. You can only
Well,
roll
I'm a
it.
goalie. I can't do anything really.
you can take shots.
I can take a shot. That's it. I can take a shot. I get scared sometimes, though. I'll be honest, but yeah, I can take a shot. That's fine. So, Snake Road. You guys ever ventured on the Snake Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple times. And unfortunately, whenever I've gone, I've seen like a black rat snake. You know, I've not hit the right day, a week too early, week too late. You know, that's obviously one of those times when you hit it spot on. I mean, I've had friends coming home and say, well, we stopped counting cottonmouths at 63. We got tired of counting. You know, it's just unreal the number of snakes you can actually see out there.
Man.
Yeah, Missouri herping, it's like that with ringnecks early in the season. When you start flipping early spring, you stop counting ringnecks after 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. And a friend of mine flipped over one rock. I think he said there was 27 ringnecks under one rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, where are you out of?
I'm in Missouri. I'm about 2 hours south of St. Louis, 2.5 hours south of St. Louis.
Okay, gotcha.
If you know military bases, Fort Leonard Wood is like in my backyard. Oh. Yeah, I apparently am really fucking up the vibe in here. This is very awkward conversations. You guys probably just do your thing. I'll just sit here.
You're doing fine. Right?
Yeah, no, I'm like asking them what their home address is. I'm looking for social security numbers right now. I'm just making it weird. Yeah, it's cool. You know, next thing I'm gonna ask you is what's the exact day you're gonna be at Snake Road and we might accidentally run into each other.
Look, Dave, I'm back. It's fine.
No, it's cool, man. You missed a great Duran conversation, by the way, man. We really went somewhere with that.
I bet you did.
So we could go off of snakes a little bit and talk about like we like to talk about funny experiences or just some crazy time. Right. So, right. So also a very beautiful species.
That's
So,
right.
by the way, I'm going to put this out here. I love the question, Ben. It's your favorite question.
Yeah.
It's got to be a segment, and you got to get something like, tell us a crazy story. We want a crazy story, like background zooming in on people. We want to hear nutsness. Maybe next
Okay.
time you have the ability to do that, or is that a Ryan thing?
I probably could do that.
Can we do that now?
Oh, no.
Dave, what you do is you ask me, and then I tell Ben to do it.
Okay.
He's gone.
No, I'm never going. This is, I'm never going to
I can do that in
I don't
there.
know what's happening. The problem is I got this really nice phone, but the camera kind of pops out the top for selfie mode, and it just keeps drawing back into the phone. I got to repop it out again. I don't know what's happening.
You got the One Plus, huh?
I got the fucking OnePlus, and I fucking hate it.
Good job, Dave.
Fucking
Next time, call me when you want to buy a phone, please.
Dude, I go into Sprint, and I'm like, I want the best camera, and they're like, the camera on this is absolutely insane. They're all like, the little thingies in this is what's inside a gamer's computer. You're going to love this phone. They didn't even have a prototype there, man. It was like a cardboard cutout. It was so important. They had to special order it.
No.
They showed up. This isn't even the end of the story. It's the build up here, man. The fucking build up. The phone shows up. I end up there. All three employees are literally unboxing my phone together in excitement. I'm over here getting all sweaty, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is me right now. I'm really, wow, look at Dave, it's a nice phone. And then I have it, and it's awful. I had a friend have a death in his life, and this thing ghost sends messages. I go to send like my condolences, and it fucking sends this like Yorkie with a big heart on its ass just throbbing. And I'm all like immediately. And I'm so fucked up. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it fucking sent it 3 more times before I even got the message out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the phone. I'm not a big fan.
Hilarious.
I should have waited for a review of the phone and not just got it because it was new.
Can we share that on the stream, the Yorkie and the heart?
I don't know if I can. I can send you guys messages. I don't know if the technology's here. I don't know if I can do it.
The Yorkie
I'll draw a
with a
picture
throbbing
next time.
bowl. Yeah, let's
Yeah, it's a Yorkie, which is a throbbing heart butthole. It's just not the message you want to send somebody when somebody dies 3 times.
What the?
Yeah. And you know, I went to Sprint bitching, and I tell them this story, and they don't even know what the fuck to say to me. They're like, "Well, you're fucked." Like, you know.
listen. The first problem is you went to Sprint. Okay.
Well, I was T-Mobile before that, which is way worse. And now they've merged. I'm not happy about that either.
I hope when you release this video, it's a Yorkie at the very beginning of this.
That is the thumbnail for sure. Oh
I'll send it to Ben. Ben could insert it in that very moment. It's gonna be right there. Right there is the throbbing butthole of a dog. Can you do that, Ben?
I
get it,
I
like,
know
right
exactly
there?
what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna need it like right in that region, right there. So this makes sense. You know what I'm talking about?
Well,
Yeah.
we do.
Sorry. I got caught up in the moment. That's my bad.
It's 2 fingers though. It's not 1. It's 2.
It's a little dog breed, buddy. Don't be weird.
No, I apologize. I don't want to be weird. I apologize.
So, what do you guys want to talk about?
I want to talk about the experiences that they've had.
Sorry. Yeah. Tell us a story.
We went way off the rails on this one.
Sorry.
What story you want to hear? Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of story?
No, I'm not telling stories. He's waiting for you guys. It's your turn now.
Yeah. You guys,
What kind of story you want? Scary, funny?
funny
You want-
story or
You want
So,
It's
sad?
got to be reptile related. Reptile related would be good. It's a reptile podcast.
Yeah.
Only I'm like on non-reptile related stuff.
So there's actually 2. There's one of a more serious story that I want to hear, like, you know, your experiences bringing in file snakes or something like that. That was cool. But to keep it comical, one of the comical ones is like, I don't know how much herping you guys do really, but we always like hearing some crazy story that, you know, happened while you're out herping or maybe at a reptile show or something like that. we always do like the funniest reptile show story that you had. And I know, Matt, you don't always end up at reptile shows. You kind of avoid them a little bit, but so I don't know how much.
Wait, hold on. He doesn't go to reptile shows to sell his reptiles. He threatens people at gunpoint and instant message at 1 o'clock in the morning while they're at reptile shows.
He didn't threaten me. He 1 in the morning messaged me.
He threatened you. It's fine.
Dave, so I'll tell that story real quick, and then you could get into yours. I'll let you guys think. But so we're at a reptile show. We just bought some rhino rats from you already, I believe, and then we were out. You know, it was Tinley. It was crazy, normal stuff. I get in bed, and Matt sends me a text, and he's like, "Hey man, are you up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just going to bed. What's up?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm just hanging out here eating." And he shows me a picture of this big steak, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool."
Tomahawk steak for sure.
Yeah, and I was like, "That's cool." And he goes, "Hey, do you want to get a good deal on some rhino rat snakes?" And I'm like, "It's 1 in the morning. Of course I want a good deal on some rhino rat snakes." And he's like, he goes, "Well, I'm just saying." And then he shows me pictures of like a rhino with like sitting over a gun with like whiskey, like all these like glamour shots of these snakes with guns and whiskey. And
there's like a $200 bottle of whiskey on a 9mm.
Yeah.
With a rhino rat snake draped over top of it.
Knives too.
Oh yeah, knives, yeah. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to bed, like whatever. What's the deal? And he tells me the deal. I'm like, sold. I'll send you the money. And I sent him the money. And so Ryan was like, I was with you until like 1 in the morning, and then we wake up at 9, and you're like, yeah, I bought a bunch of rhino rat snakes last night. And he's like, how did that happen? It's like, yeah, Matthew Most.
How between 1 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning the next Tinley did you buy 5 rhino rat snakes? Like, what happened in the middle of the night?
Gunpoint, man.
Like, Matt pulled a 9mm on me. I don't know what's going on.
So what about you guys? Fun story.
Hey, I have those pictures still if you need me to send them.
Yo,
We need to get these on the full screen.
Dave, if you should see Ryan's phone background, it's of Matt Most holding 2 guns, like
Oh, I turned it into a comic book, and I didn't steal my background on my phone. I'll put it up right now. I'm not even lying.
It is epic.
Let me center it. There's Matt with some AR-15s or whatever in a comic book.
Terrible.
There it is. I'm trying to. There we go. Come on, focus. 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 I don't know what's happening, but there's Matt going ham, and that's how you sell rhino rat snakes, baby. It's been my background on my cell phone for like 2 years.
That's awesome.
It is epic.
All right. So
I'm gonna let Clint do his story.
Have one ready. That's what it is. I'm sitting there thinking, man, I don't know what. It's like I know I'm going to be driving home.
Any funny reptile story?
Story I could have told. Oh, I don't know. One that just was kind of silly for me, I guess. So Matt had sent
It's like burn Matt today.
He had sent an adult pair of Ridley Eye to me. And, you know, I'm unbagging these things, and they go wild, absolutely wild. I'm trying to put them in tubs, and I don't know why. You would think that I would undo one at a time, but for some reason I had both knots undone on the 2 bags.
No,
and
I put them in the same bag.
Okay, that's what it was. Somehow I know I've got 2, you know, both at the same time, and they go nuts. And these things were probably 6.5.
Yeah, 6.5, 7 foot long.
Something like that.
Vicious, too.
Absolutely. They both shoot in different directions. And normally when I'm handling one of these, I'll use a hook just to try to avoid taking a shot. You know, get the bag, get them set up. No, there's no chance for hooks. They fly out of my hands. I've got both of them just a foot, you know, behind the tail is about all I got a hold of them. One shoots over, grabs hold of this arm. At this point, I'm cussing. Mother fuckers, just let it settle the fuck down. You know, I'm trying to open tubs with my feet while I've got a hold of these two snakes because I don't want them getting behind something. The last thing I want to do is go, man, I received the snakes. I've already lost one. You know, maybe I'll find it in a few days. So this goes on for literally almost 5 minutes of me wrangling these snakes because, you know, I'm a professional, right?
Yeah.
I do this all the time. I got this. So I take one hit on one arm. I'm dodging another one that pops up, shoots past my face, continuing to throw a fit through every bit of it. Finally, after 5 minutes, I get one in, close, concentrate on getting the other one off my arm, get that in, close, take a breath, turn around, and there stands my wife. She had come down and stood there silently for 5 minutes, watching me look like an asshole. Wrestling these two snakes that make me just look like a child. I think at one point I'm even going, if you will just go in the cage, I will leave you alone. Just go in the cage, I will leave you alone. I'm having full-on conversations, like trying to logic this snake into settling its ass down. I think that's about the only one I can come up with off the top of my head.
Note to self: do not put two Ridley eye in the same bag.
You can put them in there. Don't be the one who has to take two Ridley eye out of the same bag. That's the problem.
I feel like the moral of the story is do that because it's hilarious.
The best is after I called up Clint, I'm like, hey, I haven't heard from you. I called him like 4 times. Like, are the animals all right? What's going on? And then finally, Clint calls me and he's like, what the fuck did you do? Oh, I got nothing good, guys. That's it.
Yeah, you're boring, Matt. It's fine.
I mean, I've got like funny stories, but I don't know if they really belong on this podcast. We'll talk about the cocktails or something.
That's fine.
Matt's wussing out. All right, that's fine.
All right, you could
Field herping. I mean, going to graveyards, pulling out black racers out of like holes in the ground just to try to get them out. Things going crazy, biting in your face and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But not as funny as that one.
It's funny now. It wasn't funny then.
So next time we have you on, when Clint sends you a pair of things in the same bag, we'll talk about that. Bunch of king rats in the same bag. He's like, I threw an extra one in there. It's 2 males just to get it all crazy.
Here's a bag with 30 tokays in it.
There you go. That'll get you.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about a story, Matt, of what you actually had to go through with getting in? I don't know. The Japanese forest rats, I think, are cool. You know, like what did you go through to get them in and get them established?
So, I mean, for some of those, I mean, talking about like stories and things like that, and like things that you see happen in the hobby. I think one of the hardest things in the hobby is losing a friend that also has snakes, and potentially even, you know, like if something happened to one of you guys, but you lived in different states, like who do you call, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've been in that situation a couple of times, and those are not easy situations. And you know, when you're thinking about that, no one really kind of like pre-plans for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, talking about conspics, Japanese forest rat snakes, you know, Rex Knight, I mean, he did a lot of the foundation work with some of those animals, and then some of those original wild caught animals came to my house right around the time of his passing. And you know, it was one of those interesting parts to see like how full circle the hobby is, right? I mean, we're at the end of the day, the friendships are really what bring us all together, right? The interest in the animals is obviously what kind of gains our momentum and talking, but you know, doing projects with each other, you know, that's the coolest part, I think, too, because it brings you to start talking more frequently. You start to learn more about people's families, the relationships. You get cool engagement notifications. But you know, I mean, that's a cool part of it, but bringing in animals and things like that. I mean, there's been some rough situations too. I mean, working with animals for the first time, even like talking about friendships. There's been several points in this hobby that I was like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
I'm done with this, because like you keep pushing yourself to the edge, right? But it's cool that like how supportive like the friendships are with each other, especially when you do partnerships and stuff like that. It really draws that momentum.
Yeah. That's a good point. We actually, I just was listening to Ryan McVeigh, which I want to bring up another point. His podcast last night or the other day. Was it last night? Maybe it was last night. I listened to it this morning, and he mentioned that he's getting a couple snakes from you. Is that true?
He got a pair of cock's eye, so it must have been a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
Erica just posted those. Those are awesome, man.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So that's that new line. But yeah, I mean, it's cool to see people that are, genuinely interested in this stuff.
Oh yeah, but his whole podcast was all about prepping and knowing what to do if there's a storm, or knowing what to do if your power goes out, or if there's a flood, or if you have to go away for a couple months, or if you get hospitalized, or if you pass. All these crazy things to think about. And I don't want to steal the thunder. And so anybody that's still listening at this point, make sure you go listen to Ryan McVeigh's podcast about this. But yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, if you have some awesome animals and that have specific care, what do you do if you're not there anymore? Like, who knows that stuff? Like ball python's easy. You can hand those off to a million people, but like the forest rats or all different. You guys keep so many different things that would be tough for anybody just to pick up. It's tough.
Like Stan, he's got like a 7-foot BCO, and his wife hates it because it just like hits at the glass like the minute you walk by. It's actually called roadkill because that's what he feeds his like. But wow. I mean, everyone's afraid to open the cage. But like Stan's even told me, he goes, "Man, if anything ever happened to me," he goes, "I want you to come down and get the animal because I would feel bad about something happening."
Yeah.
But I'm not looking forward, and hopefully that never happens. But I don't want to open that glass cage either.
If you do, video it so we can all be part of it.
Yeah. So what about you guys? You guys got any cool projects cooking up over there?
No, we're all boring over here. I don't know.
No. We got all these cool projects that we got from you.
What about sunbeams?
We didn't get those yet.
No sunbeams because I don't know how to treat them for parasites or lungworms or all this jazz. So
that's what Clint and I were actually talking.
Because that's something I really don't have much experience with either. It's know how to treat for external parasites, but not internal parasites. And
yeah,
that's obviously, if wanting to continue to bring new things in, it's something that I don't want to just rely on him for that piece of it. It's another section of it to kind of divide and conquer. So, just recently spoke on wanting to learn more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like treating them with Panicure or something, like you could get like a weight to whatever dose ratio and probably it'll work out. But like washing out the lungs of an animal, like, I don't know, man. That seems a little sketchy to me. Probably need to be walked through that a couple times. I don't know.
Well, and even too, like with treating animals, you've got to be so careful with that too, because you've got to treat for the proper parasites. Most people use these broad spectrum things, and it causes more issues than what it could do positively for the animal.
Yeah.
And it's even hard, like if anybody's listening, it's hard even for people that are experienced with stuff when we first were like, oh, we got to give antibiotics to an injection to a ball python. It seems easy, but like, well, there's that aspect of it too. But then you're like, well, where do I stick it? Like, how far down? If it's coiled up, am I in the right spot? Like, am I going too deep? There's a lot to it that it just takes experience and understanding, like you guys are talking about, to really understand it.
And even then you can screw it up too, right? Like, you could do it perfectly and the animal just reacts poorly to it and it overloads the liver or the kidney or whatever, and that animal passes. Like, it's just tough all around.
Yeah. Like Barchek, he's done so many videos and he gets a lot of heat for it and stuff like that. Some of it's very good information. It's just a matter that sometimes, you have people that aren't experienced keepers and they could make mistakes potentially. So it's challenging, because you don't learn everything by reading either. You've got to learn by doing too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened today? Did you get arrested, do you think?
That has come close, actually.
He either got accosted by a raccoon, the kids mugged him, or a cop didn't like the fact that he didn't have his license on him. I don't know.
That happened once, yeah. After the episode, a cop came up and was like, hey, and he's like, actually, I'm just on a podcast. And the cop's like, oh, that's great. No problem. Can I see your license? He goes, it's in my other pants. And we're like, all right, we'll talk to you later, man. Like, we'll get arrested. But his phone probably died or something. He might not come back, and that's okay. It happens.
He was just sitting there flexing his mustache anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
Dave is a wealth of knowledge, and we all have different strengths. And this was one of the ones that he's like, I don't know a lot about old world rat snakes, so I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And there's stuff like when we talk about to a boa person, Dave's been doing boas for 20 years more,
Right.
We can't.
Last week I barely said a thing because it was like all him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't know crap about what we were talking about.
So we go back and forth. So it's really good balance between all of us, I think. But yeah, I mean, you guys are like kind of top of your game almost when it comes to rat snakes and old world rat snakes, like
old and new.
Yeah, and new.
Let's be fair.
To be fair, but I think that there's just a lot less people doing old world rat snakes, and we do those videos, and people ask about them. Not a lot of people, but people ask about them, and I think that there's gonna be a big market for just rare species in general,
Right.
So I think it's really cool what you guys are doing.
Yeah, our main market is ball python people, and every time we do a rat snake or a skink video, it kind of goes downhill. But there's always those percentage of people that are like, "What is that?" And like these things just like pop, like just a normal phase, like cockeye, laticinctus, anything like that, mandarin rat snake. Like these things are beautiful animals in and of themselves. So like the more exposure we can get to those animals out to people, especially in the quote, money ball python community where everybody kind of siphons in and then they kind of take their little off-roads, you know what I mean? I think it's good.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've said that's what's attracted me to the Asians above everything else is you're not chasing a morph. You're not chasing, you don't have to have that next newest, thing or because I will say it's one of the things that kind of annoys me is when I hear that term world's first. Mm-hmm. And it's, another ball python, right? So I just like, But, when it comes to the Asians, when someone's over at the house and they're down there and they're looking through the room and I'm opening, different cages and showing them animal after animal, a phrase I'm commonly saying is, this is exactly what it would look like if you went over there, flipped a rock and found one. It's just pretty in nature. It's not any genetic anomaly or mutation. This is how beautiful this animal looks naturally. And with Asians, I think that there's, a lot of them that just carry a lot of color, and they're neat. They really are.
Yeah, talking about popularity over the years, the Asian rat snakes themselves have gained a lot of popularity, but I think part of it is the captive breeding of the species.
Mhm.
The other cool part is in most situations, home environments, you can keep them with no light, no heat, and in a nice display cage.
Room temperature.
You
No
know,
issues.
Mhm.
which for some parents, very eye-opening, right? I mean, it's kind of like, wait, that's all I need? That's
Mhm.
it. And I think, the fact that the captive breeding is producing hardier animals, the myths of these animals dying rapidly and stuff like that are starting to get disposed of because those were early animals in the 80s and 90s. And some of those rumors are moving out because some of those people are no longer in the hobby or
Mhm.
keeping animals, so they can't just keep repeating it. Um, I see the future really of captive born, offerings. I mean, that's really the truth, right? That's really where
Yep.
we want to get to. Because I mean, we're our worst enemies on this planet,
Yep.
and if we don't produce them in captivity, unfortunately, we're gonna miss out on providing our future the opportunity to see these animals outside of a book.
Yeah. I think and I've been thinking about this last couple of days, but and I know that I've talked about this. Ryan's going to be like, yeah, but I really think that so we focus so much on the hobbyist, and we focus so much on people in the hobby are like, oh man, these guys are starting to get interesting in the hobby, and these snake people are really starting to like cockeye now, and that's cool. But I want to hit, and what I'm starting to see more and more of, and I think this is because of YouTube and Instagram, but we're starting to see more of is pet people that know nothing about it get an interest in some crazy animal, and then they're starting to say, well, how do I get into that? How do I get that one animal? It was really starting to become apparent to me, and I'm going to say, it might sound strange, but Miguel from AEP, he does ball pythons, nice guy, a friend of ours, we really like him, but he's working with like gamers, and he's doing like hanging out with people, and he's just showing them animals, and people are buying. Like, people have never owned a reptile before. Like, that's pretty cool. And Brian Barczyk, he's reaching pet markets, and people are like, that's pretty cool. And so I think that the pet market is starting to slowly get more and more into serious reptile animals, which is good for the hobby, and it's good for the animals themselves. There's going to be a learning curve, and hopefully, on the harder species or the more expert or intermediate species, the sellers are being like, hey, this is, you really got to know what you're doing. You got to do your research, like you say, Matt. But I think that people are like, they're interested in the rare and cool things just like they would in anything else, but now it's a reptile. But the hobby's like this big.
Right.
Pet market's like this big. So even if we can hit 5% of the pet market, we're gonna have bearded dragons. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
and could you imagine one of these species that we can actually get established, that we can figure out and really get working, and then becomes a not common but more common pet? Like, I just think that there's a lot of benefit to that.
Even going off of that, Chaz, who owns gets snakes and adders over in Europe, is a pet store retail shop. I don't know if you guys follow him, or if you even follow him. Real interesting guy, but like he's taken exactly the stance that you're talking about, procuring it as like a pet market. Because for instance, he doesn't sell green iguanas. He doesn't sell. I think it was water dragons or something like that. He said because they're so imported and people think of them as expendable pets.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see them in shelters, you see it being abused, where, like you said, I mean, your buddy over there exploiting, being like, hey, check this out, introducing it. You're bringing it in because, like, even you think about it, like, do you really see normal ball pythons with no teeth? Do you really see normal bearded dragons?
Nope.
You
I just
know?
tried to buy one
Yeah.
for a friend. Super hard to find a normal bearded dragon, even in the pet shops. Petco, they're not normals.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, I mean, it comes into it, right? So, I mean, more captive breeding, things of that nature. I mean, we're bringing people into the vet industry, but, even talking to Ryan, I mean, and looking at products that they sell or, any of the reptile products, I mean, it makes up probably as much of their sales on a large, because you've got fish sales, you've got mammal sales,
Oh, yeah.
dog, cat,
Birds, yeah.
So, I mean, it's an interesting aspect of the whole industry. And I mean, we're a small segment of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's funny because like we produced through a partnership with you our first pulcra this year, and first
You'll get beat up by that one by some European person later.
but we put it on our primarily ball python Instagram, and everybody's like, "What is that?" And you're like, "Oh, that's a wild type looking animal, and this is what it is, and it's super easy to care for." Like the percentage of market share that you could have with those animals that, your classic, I know pet reptiles from PetSmart, Petco, whatever. When they start to see this new segment come in, where they're not terribly expensive, they're pretty easy to take care of, they're beautiful looking in their own right without even being a morph. Like they just never been introduced to it, and then they see it and they're like, wow, like there's so much market share there, like from a purely business perspective, that is, as long as you can expose that audience to it, it's kind of unlimited.
Right.
It's what I love about some of the Asians, I mean, specifically the cockside, the poultry, the response I get when I share those from my business page to my personal page on Facebook, I will get comment after comment from people that are not snake people at all.
Mm-hmm.
That say that common statement of, I don't like snakes, but that is very pretty.
Yeah.
That right there, it's enough that it grabs the attention of someone that doesn't even like snakes at all. But they have to say that one's beautiful, or wow, the color on that. What kind is this? Is that from here? Or all that. I mean, so it's enough that it can get the attention of anyone in the industry or not.
Yep, absolutely.
Can we just say, for the record, I don't know if anybody here has the official word. Is it pulcher or pulcra? Because I've seen it both ways on the internet, and I'm a little confused.
It depends if in Latin, if you're referring to the feminine or the masculine form of it. So that's why you'll see it both ways.
So both are correct.
Sure would be the dominant form to use, but you could use it interchangeably.
Right on.
A little more feminine. You can keep doing it the way you're doing it. But if you want to man up.
Yeah.
Listen, I spent like 3 months trying to figure out why apples are feminine in Spanish. Okay, so I'm not the right one to ask about this.
I only know that from having this conversation before. Like, what's the proper? And I mean, they're both accepted. It's just how you want to present it. So
I'm just glad I got that one right. I mean, I screw up these words constantly, and then you throw my hillbilly accent in on top of it, and I really sound like an asshole here. I'm trying to keep up with the big smart guys.
Hey man, when we're doing the videos, Ryan will be filming and I'll be talking, and he'll be like, "Nope, one more time, Ben. Nope, one more time, Ben. You just sound stupid right now, Ben." Like right, and I'm just like, "Come on, man. I was on a groove."
Oh, you stupid! You're so smart.
That's what he says. You're so smart. It's real cute that you're trying to say these Latin words.
You are
I
cute.
hate that part, man. I'm telling you. Holly, fracas. I mean,
Yeah. I just like that we can kind of say like conspic and just leave it at that, like, and not like the full whatever it is.
Eurocryptophis conspiculatus.
I'm like, this isn't so hard. Coxeye. Okay, yeah, I'm going to be able to do these Latin things, no problem.
Yeah.
Next one is Laticinctus. You know what I mean? It's,
Yeah.
Eurocryptophis isn't that bad. I don't know. Way worse ones. I don't know.
You can go like type it in, and then it pronounces it perfectly, and then you try to do it, and you're like,
The hardest one is Sarpamitra. It took me like 5 times to get that.
I still can't say that. I still have to like hope my phone remembers how to spell it. Like if I just get Sarp in there and it reminds me in, try to tag him in something.
That's funny. Well, we're coming up on 3 hours. It's 2 hours and 49 minutes of a live recording. So I think if you guys want to talk anything else, we can. If not, I think it's not a terrible place to start winding this down. So
Good.
cool, man.
You have any open
ready
items?
to get down to the bar? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. Do you have any anything else you're like, man, people really need to know that, I don't know, 100
No,
flower
because when I
hats
give all this extra info, it means you don't invite us back again.
we want to do a round table with more people for a couple different groups of things going on. So we're trying to figure those out still.
The hard part is always just coordinating everyone's schedules.
Oh, I know.
We'll have to do it in person next time.
Done deal. I'll cook.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I'll bring ostrich eggs.
We'll bring a bottle of Pappies. We'll have some tomahawks. It's all good.
Then when we get good liquored up, we'll throw 2 Ridley Eye in the middle of the room.
Whoever can wrestle them into a bin, you're good.
Yeah.
Whoever grabs it first wins.
I can see that going pretty good. Just fine.
This thing got me in the eye. What the heck?
2 liters of blood later, they're still out.
Yeah. Oh,
man. No, thanks guys for having us. Appreciate it.
It's been a great time.
Thank you guys so much. I think that there was a lot of great information. I think people are going to learn a lot on this. So
Yeah,
We really appreciate it, man. You guys are a wealth of knowledge, and it's just a good time, man.
Thanks so much, fellas.
We talked about a lot of stuff that wasn't really specific to just the snake. So I think that's cool too.
yeah. And we'll come out at some point and we'll do the video care stuff, and try to hang out and do fun stuff as well, other videos. But
Yeah, for sure.
these podcasts are cool, but not usually very specific. So
Yeah, are you guys getting good hits on these or?
it's a little bit of a story. I should probably we should end it and then we'll tell you about it afterwards. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe and the notification bell, and make sure you watch out for us every Saturday at noon. We'll be posting up these podcasts on YouTube. So
Go check out Bartley Reptiles, Sarpamitra,
yep,
Instagram, Facebook. These guys are all over the place. Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook. I'll do that. All right, thanks guys.
Take care.